Chapter 5:19 Destroying the Guardian Headquarters. As soon as the Dark Lord painted the walls with Peyton, the elites immediately rushed into the room to protect Tanulia. All of them were still boggled by Peyton's death. They had no idea how he killed Peyton without even laying a finger on her. He snapped his finger, and she just exploded in the blink of an eye. The imposter Dark Lord, the undead, was laughing like a maniac looking at the Guardian's panic. "I won't kill you now, Tanulia Vauren. First, I will take away everything from you. Then I will kill your precious elites. Only when you wish for death, I grant you your wish." Although the elites surrounding her were trained to be fearless warriors, they all feared for their lives deep down. Besides, the armor the Under was wearing kept releasing fear toxin in the air. Thus, everyone who breathed in the air felt fear clutching their hearts. Michael planned everything to the last detail. Boom! Tanulia felt hot blood splashing on her yet again as an elite guardian exploded. The empty silver armor he wore hit the ground with a sickening thud. "We have to go, Alpha Guardian." "Ha!" The undead laughed as the elites tried to take Tanulia away from the room. However, she did not even budge an inch from the room. Once again, Michael raised his hand, making the Guardians' hearts pound against their chests. Boom! Michael snapped, and just like before, a Guardian exploded from within. At that moment, the entire white room turned red, and blood oozed out of the walls and ceiling. Not only the walls but also Tanulia herself were drenched in blood. Her rosy face was covered by the blood of Peyton and 2 elite guardians. For the first time in her life, her mind went blank. She was unable to think of the next step. As they were in a daze, hoping he wouldn't snap his finger one more time, Zanali entered the room. As soon as she entered the room, her face went pale. Her body shuddered, feeling her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Visit. For a better user experience, looking at all the blood and horror on the Guardians' faces and no Peyton in the room made her think of the worst. She stepped into the room as blood oozed down from the ceiling, reaching her crimson-red robes. Only then did she notice the Dark Lord's face on the wall. Despite all the blood, she could still make out his face. Where is Peyton?" That was the first question Zanali asked. "You're stepping on her." Zanali felt a chill hearing the Dark Lord's words. However, she noticed the one sitting on the chair didn't open his mouth. Since Zanali left the room way before the real Dark Lord's appearance and Peyton's death, she was pretty confused. "Peyton is all around you, Zanali Hearthill. Princess of Nagaland." Zanali's body went rigid as she stared at the wall blankly. The last time Zanali met the Dark Lord in the Silent Reaper, he revealed her race. Now somehow, he had learned her real identity. Except for Peyton and Tanulia, no one knew about her race or identity as the Nagaland princess, not even Noah. What happened? This Peyton? Zanali stuttered. Gradually, she felt a lump forming in her throat which made taking a difficult task. When the Guardians exploded, at least their armors survived the explosion. But, unfortunately, the same couldn't be said of Peyton. Not even a shred of Peyton's clothes survived the blast except her glasses. Zanali saw the glasses lying on the bloody floor and bent her knees to pick them up. Her hands shivered uncontrollably as her mind refused to accept Peyton was dead. "Take a long look at what's around you, Guardians. This is what's waiting for you if you stand in my way." At that time, even Zanali couldn't be courageous due to the fear toxin in the air. After hearing his words, Zanali turned around, holding Peyton's glasses tightly. All the sweet memories she had with Peyton flashed across her eyes. "We have to leave the ship, Alpha Guardian." Zanali's eyes flickered as Michael saw her pupils shrinking in size. At that moment, her eyes resembled the eyes of a Naga rather than a human. "The ship is rigged to blow. We must go now." Tanulia took her gaze away from the Dark Lord. "The captain is dead and so do several Guardians." Her rage and anger in her heart fought back the fear toxin in her bloodstream. Zanali momentarily pushed all her grief and anger to the back of her mind and informed Alpha Guardian of what she saw. Zanali recalled the bodies she saw on her way to the captain's cabin. All of the Guardians guarded the hallways, and the captain's cabin was killed. Someone slit their throats and the captain literally had no head when she reached his cabin, where Zanali saw several explosives placed all around the room. Though unfamiliar with the explosives that looked like bricks pulsated red light, she sensed the heat building up within the bricks. Visit. For a better user experience, the last time we met, you destroyed the Silent Reaper. So now it's payback time, bitch. Michael snickered as he snapped his finger. The Guardians shuddered, but unlike they expected, none of them blew into a puppy red mist. Instead, the room the Dark Lord was standing in lit up. He was standing in a room with several world maps hanging from the walls and an oak table just a meter behind him. On the other side of the oak table sat a headless corpse that Zanali had seen a few minutes ago. He is in the captain's cabin. Tanulia immediately recognized the room, Alpha Guardian. The remaining 3 Guardians tried to stop Tanulia, but they were pushed away by her. Then, on her way out, she grabbed the glowing sword sticking out of the undead's guts. Ha ha ha, Pulch. Tanulia swung the sword and cut his head clean off of his shoulder. Then, she strolled out of the room and didn't seem like anyone could stop her. Her eyes were bloodshot with anger. Boom. Suddenly, they heard a loud explosion as the ship trembled violently. Soon, the ship tilted sideways. Boom. The explosion went off again. This time, the Guardians and Zanali were thrown off balance. The explosion sound continually rang in their heads and soon, the howling sound indicated the hull breach. Immediately Zanali grabbed the jade stone lying on the floor before stumbling out of the room while holding the walls for support. Get out of here! Zanali shouted at the elites following her behind. The lights flickered for a moment before ultimately going out. Then, the place turned dark as the emergency lights lit the hallway in a dim crimson red. I will go get the Alpha Guardian. Zanali had to shout even though the Guardian stood close to her due to the howling wind sound. But Dash visits. For the best experience, itis and order. Zanali pushed the armored guards away before turning around to chase down Tanulia. The 2 remaining guards had no choice but to find a way to escape the ship. Unfortunately, the ship kept tilting left and right, making moving forward a problematic task. However, holding onto the walls, the 2 of them walked along towards the cargo bay, where they received the fake Dark Lord. That opening was the quickest and closest way to escape the ship. Don't fall back, Stas. The armored elite guardian leading the way shouted at the one behind him. The guardian behind was staggering until the elite guardian shouted at him. Then, the guardian's walking became steadier despite the ship's frantic shaking. He walked steadily and lifted the silver helmet off, revealing the face beneath. It wasn't Stas as the elite guardian claimed. It was Michael. He was disguised as the guard and remained in the room the whole time. Stars! When the narrow hallway opened up to reveal the cargo bay, the elite guard shouted in relief. But, unfortunately, when he turned around, his relief became a shock. Boom! Michael snapped his finger before the guard could react. Just like earlier, the guard exploded into a bloody mist the moment he snapped his finger. While Tanulia and Zanali were on their way to the captain's cabin, Michael punched the ship, forming a large hole in the hull. Since they were so high in the sky and rapidly descending, the wind and pressure were strong enough to push any normal human being like a piece of paper. However, Michael wasn't a normal human being. Thus, he stood in front of the hole, looking at the tiny buildings on the ground. The ship descended straight towards Elon's Guardian headquarters in Kingdom Draddle. Michael made sure the captain set a course to the Draddle before he took the captain's head. Michael conjured the dark flames, and the moment the dark flames touched the hull, the ship caught on fire. The ship was built to withstand fire but not against a powerful primordial flame such as the dark flames. Hence, the dark flames spread through the ship like wildfire, burning everything in its path. At that moment, everyone on the ground shouted at seeing the giant flaming meteor descending towards the Guardian castle. Immediately the mages and the guardians flew out of the castle to stop the ship from colliding with the castle. It wouldn't take a genius to figure out that the result would be catastrophic if the ship crashed onto the castle. The Alpha Guardians in the castle immediately evacuated the people inside while the otters were casting spells to stop the ship. But at that moment, they all knew stopping the ship wasn't an option. Thus, they all braced for impact and tried to slow down the ship. Far away from the castle, Michael was floating above the clouds in his Lucifer form. The imminent destruction of Tenulia's warship and the headquarters put a wide grin on his face behind the mask. Visit. For a better user experience, it was a real pity that he couldn't hijack the ship because of all the runes and protective arrays. Unfortunately, the system level was too low to hack them, but the system could disable the defensive arrays for a short time. This short amount of time was enough for Michael to set it on fire and send it toward the castle. Payback, bitch. Michael turned around while the ship crashed onto the castle in the distance, creating a giant explosion. Several hours ago, Michael was floating above the clouds and looking at Tenulia on the sandy beach. She looked the size of a bullet ant from where he was. Michael wore his suit of armor and was shrouded in dark clouds. In simple words, he was in his complete Lucifer form. My lord, Azazel appeared beside Michael above the clouds. He is ready. Michael turned his head to see an undead wearing the same suit of armor as him. It cost Michael 6,000 badass points to buy the suit of armor and make the alpha undead wear it. Additionally, Michael attached a voice modulator he invented to the undead's throat. The feeds are online. Azazel pointed at the alpha undead's eyes. Go to the dark forest and monitor everything. What will you do about the warship approaching, my lord? Michael looked over his shoulder and activated his thermal vision. The moment the vision went blurry blue, he noticed a bright orange blob of a heat signature approaching their location. Cloaking technology, cool. Michael smiled, feeling his excitement bubbling inside. If the Alpha Guardian's ship could have the cloaking ability, Michael could equip his warships and vehicles with the same technology but only better. Hijack or destroy, Michael calmly said. Now go. Have good hunting, my lord. Azazel bowed deeply before his ghostly figure vanished into thin air, leaving Michael and the Alpha undead behind. After Azazel left, it was time to implement his plan. With a flick of his wrist, he manipulated the wind around the undead. Thanks to his 10% wind manipulation, he was able to levitate the undead slowly to the beach from the sky. My lord, as Michael was flying the undead to the beach, he heard Azazel's voice in his head. I have established a connection with his voice modulator. I can now speak on your behalf. Good. They'll be listening. Keep them think he's the Dark Lord. Yes, my lord. Visits? For the best no_of_interesting experience, Azazel went silent as Michael finally landed the undead on the beach. Then, Michael flew higher into the air while controlling the undead telepathically. After merging his soul pieces together, his multitasking ability soared through the roof. Controlling the undead and flying had become as easy as breathing to him. Lightning dash. Michael flew at the invisible warship, leaving a dark trail in the sky. His speed had reached the point that when he flew away, he left after images of himself in the sky that lasted for a couple of seconds. In a few breaths of time, Michael arrived above the warship. He activated the thermal vision to see several guardians guarding the upper deck. They all wore metal plate armor from head to toe. However, when Michael disabled the thermal vision, the guards disappeared from his sight. So they also have the ability to use cloak. I need to get my hands on one of those armors. He already planned to disguise himself as a guard, but looking at the armor's ability to turn invisible, he decided to take it for himself. At that moment, there were 4 guardians patrolling the upper deck. Since the ship was Tenulia's headquarters, only the best of the best resided on the ship. Eladir, looking at the invisible ship floating through the clouds, Michael established a connection with Eladir. Can you the warship? Michael broadcasted what he saw to Eladir's mirror through the interlinked spiders and mirrors. I am not familiar with this vision. Can you place the rune I put in the space ring onto the ship's hull? It made sense that thermal vision was new to Eladir. Therefore, Michael nodded and waited for the soldier patrolling the ship's quarterdeck to turn around. Then the moment the soldier turned around, Michael dived down until he reached the ship's back, but he didn't touch the ship. You cannot make contact. Put this blue rune on your hands. It will temporarily prevent the ship from activating its defense arrays. The ring in Michael's middle finger let out a dim glow, indicating that Eladir, who had the interlinked space ring, added something into the space ring. Michael sent a sliver of his arch energy to access the ring and retrieved a golden parchment. When he opened the parchment while still floating behind the ship, he noticed a blue rune that resembled an eye glowing on the parchment. Touch the rune. As soon as Michael touched the rune turned into glowing blue dust and settled on his palm, forming the rune on his dark gloves. With the glowing rune in his hand, Michael touched the hull. Immediately Michael had a cold chill all over his body. Now place this rune on the ship. Once again, Michael retrieved another parchment from his space ring. This time, there was a rune in the shape of a fire symbol burning in the parchment. Like before, when he touched the rune, it turned into glowing crimson red dust, floated to his right hand, and formed the rune on his palm. The latest episodes are on website. Michael heard a muffled creaking sound coming from the ship when he placed the rune on the ship's hull. They did an acceptable job, I think. But my runes are better. The Eye of Xianxia will give you 5 minutes of time, which is more than enough for you to deal with the guards. Wear one of their armors and you're good to go, Eladir instructed him. Although Eladir heard that Michael was a hitman on Earth, he had no idea how skilled Michael was. Way ahead of you, Michael already planned to wear one of their armor. Now with the glowing blue rune, which was apparently called the Eye of Xianxia, Michael climbed the ship carefully. Even when he was wearing heavy armor, Michael was extremely nimble. He climbed the distance of 20 meters in a minute. Then when he reached the deck, he looked up to see the guard leaning on the edge, watching the night sky. Michael was just a few inches beneath the guard, and if the guard looked down, he might see him. But before the guard could do so, Michael performed a ledge assassination by pulling the guard down by his neck and snapping his neck in a blink of an eye. Thanks to the system, he only had to pay 100 badass points, and the armor would appear around him. Otherwise, he had to remove the armor from the soldier and wear it piece by piece, which would take time, and in that time, other guards might notice their colleague missing. Michael dropped the naked soldier down and climbed up the ledge as one of the guardians. After he had equipped the armor, he felt a vague connection with the armor. He closed his eyes for a moment as his silver armor flickered a few times before turning invisible. But, of course, it wasn't a perfect cloak. One could see the distortion in the air due to light refraction. He was confident enough to perfect the cloak with the help of Eladir, the system, and his inventor skills. The only thing Michael lacked was a blacksmith skilled enough to forge worthy armor. Michael killed one of the 4 guardians, leaving 3 guardians on the deck. One guardian was standing near the main sail post while the other 2 guarded the ship's front. Despite the cloak, the other soldiers seemed they could see through the cloak. Otherwise, the soldier wouldn't have nodded at Michael, who was invisible. Michael nodded back while looking at the soldier closely. The armor protected the whole body by covering head to toe. However, a gap between the chest plate and helmet exposed the neck by several inches. The gap was not wide enough for a sword to cut through, but Michael's hidden blades could. Michael adjusted his armor sleeves to form a gap so the hidden blades could come out without damaging the silver armor. Looking at the soldier, Michael moved his hand behind and took out a copper coin from his system storage. The coin was made of junk metal and enhanced by Eladir's runes, just like his spiders. Hence, when Michael sent a spider carrying the coin to the ledge near the soldier, they triggered no arrays. When the spider dropped the coin a few meters away from the soldier, Michael activated the copper coin. For a moment, it flickered, and then it produced a low-pitched whistling sound. What the? The soldier signaled Michael to keep his eyes on him before turning and walking towards the coin. The soldiers on the front were still looking at the other side. The 2 of them seemed to be having an interesting conversation in Michael's eyes. Instead of following the soldier's order, Michael floated toward him, without making a sword. As a result, the soldier had no idea Michael was behind him when he bent down to pick up the coin. The latest episodes are on website. Michael grabbed his neck from behind and immediately sent his hidden blade through the armor gap. The soldier made a sickening growl as Michael cut his vocal cords and threw him off the ledge. 2 down, 2 to go. Even though the soldiers were elites, they were inside the void, making them powerless in front of Michael. While walking toward the 2 soldiers, the atmosphere grew darker as Michael cast the death range spell to enhance his powers to a terrifying level. We are really going to capture the Dark Lord. Those amateurs in the guild just overhyped him. In truth, they are just incompetent. No shit. That's why they are still guardians and we are hunters, the two soldiers gossiped, having no idea death was nearing them. I'm excited to receive a huge bonus from Alpha Guardian. How much do you think it is? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I can afford a mansion and a huge piece of land with it. Considering it was nighttime, the soldiers failed to notice the darkness formed by the death range. Besides, Michael floated towards them, so they heard no footsteps. Hello, boys. They heard a sudden cold voice and tried to turn around. However, Michael grabbed both of them by their necks and tightened his grasp, crushing their helmets. Their armor flickered, revealing the caved-in heads. The next moment, Michael tossed them down from the ship. Finally, Michael cleared all the guards on the upper deck. My lord, Miss Peyton has arrived. Azazel's voice sounded in his head. Stall her. I'm on my way to the dining area. It's time the soldiers tasted my blood tonic. Michael looked around the empty deck. The latest _____ are on _____ website. I still got it. Michael felt proud of his handiwork. In a matter of a couple of minutes, he assassinated 4 elites like they were nothing. It had been so long since he used his assassin skills in this world. With a proud grin under the helmet, Michael made his way to the ship's center, where he saw a latch. Pulling up the latch, Michael opened the doorway to the lower decks. He climbed down the ladder and reached a narrow hallway lit with elegant small chandeliers. He stepped on a ruby-red carpet that ran from the ladder to the other parts of the ship. A few meters away from Michael, he noticed a soldier guarding a door, and when he noticed Michael, he turned his head. What are you doing down here? The guardian asked. Man, I need to get something to eat. I'm starving. Michael quickly disabled his cloak and rubbed his belly. Damn it, man, quickly eat something and return to your post. The guardian had a British accent which slightly surprised Michael and reminded him of the time Michael traveled to London to kill a billionaire in his own mansion. Will do. Michael slowly walked towards the soldier while looking around to see if he could find any clues to locate the kitchen. Seeing Michael approaching him, the soldier raised his hand. Where are you going, mate? The dining area is through that door. The soldier pointed at the door couple of doors away from the door Michael was at. Michael expected the soldier to point out the way because only one of two things could have happened. 1. The soldier would point out the right way. Else, he would suspect Michael and try to apprehend him, which would have resulted in Michael killing him and burning his body to ashes with dark flames. Luckily for the soldier, he chose the first option. My mind is boggled, man. Thanks anyways. You want anything? Yeah, get me a pastry on your way out, the soldier said as Michael nodded. Sure thing. As he reached the door to the kitchen, he twisted the copper knob and was welcomed by an enormous, high-ceilinged room, large enough to contain at least 70 people, with mounds of glittering brass pots and pans heaped around the stone walls and a great brick fireplace at the other end. In addition, there were 7 rows of long oak tables and benches for the guardians to dine on. At that moment, the kitchen was rather empty, and only a few guardians sat on the benches, having their fill. All the oak tables had several pots and bowls filled with various dishes. When Michael reached one of the oak tables, he grabbed a pastry, lifting his helmet a bit. Not bad. The pastry melted in his mouth. He took a big bite and made his way to the brass pots. I thought only we have a break. Seeing Mykov, a blonde-haired soldier who was having porridge, said, I am starving. Can't be on an empty stomach when we catch the Dark Lord, can we? Michael amused. Can't argue with that point? Finish it quickly, Mac. We can't be late to receive the Dark Lord. Michael was pleasantly surprised. Visits. For a better user experience, is that so? You guys are so lucky, you get to see the Dark Lord up close. The blonde soldier rolled his eyes. Lucky my ass. I'd rather guard Lady Tyriana's room than stay close to that creepy fucker. Still standing near a brass pot, Michael asked the soldiers. Speaking of Lady Tyriana, I have a message for her. From Alpha Guardian. I need to get that to her ASAP. Then what are you doing here? Lady Tyriana's room is on the other side. Another red-haired guardian with a long cut across his tanned face spoke in a thick accent. I will go. After I taste this baby. Michael pretended to take a long whiff of the aroma from the brass pot before him. You guys tried this? Asked Michael, ignoring the red-haired man. What's in there? Asked another soldier. Meanwhile, Michael controlled the spider he used to distract the soldier to crawl through the hallway. Fortunately, Michael found a map of the interior on the wall. It made sense to make a painting of the map and hang this on the wall for the soldiers to navigate through this giant ship. Chicken soup. What the hell? Let's have a taste, shall we? Michael grabbed 5 ceramic bowls from the table beside him and filled them with the chicken soup while showing his back to the guardians. With fast and precise movements, Michael took out blood tonic, which was a muddy brown potion, poured it into the bowls, and turned around. The brown potion quickly became colorless and blended with the chicken soup. Here you go, guys. Michael memorized the map as he put the bowls on the table. You should go now, the red-haired man coldly said after Michael took a sip of the soup. Okay, geesh. You're aiming for Employee of the Month or something. Michael's words made the others chuckle while Michael grabbed a bunch of pastries. This is for me to have on the way. Michael walked away from the guardians. On his way towards the door, he looked over his shoulder to see all of them take a long sip of chicken soup. When he came out of the kitchen, he quickly took out another blood tonic potion and drenched them in the potion. For a moment, the pastries looked wet, but soon, they regained their usual crispy texture after the pastries absorbed the nanites. Then, Michael navigated through the hallway according to the map, and on his way, he handed over pastries to the guardians patrolling the hallways. Only then did Michael realize how hungry these soldiers were. It didn't even take any effort to make them eat the pastries. The latest episodes are on _ website. Is everything ready? As he was walking in the hallway, on his way to Tiriana's room, Michael saw Zanali escorted by 3 guardians walking towards him. Yes, Guardian Captain. Everything is in place. Good. I don't want any surprises. Suddenly Zanali turned her gaze away from the guardian beside her to Michael, who was standing in the hallway with a pastry in his hand. What are you doing? Despite the situation, Michael remained calm. For an assassin, it was paramount to stay calm since panicking wouldn't solve anything. Hungry Guardian Captain, Michael sounded like an embarrassed more solid. Seeing him scratch the back of his neck, Zanali rolled her eyes. Plop. Surprisingly, she slapped his hand with enough force to make him drop the pastry in his hand. Return to your post before I make you have no post to return to, she growled. Yes, Guardian Captain. Michael turned his tone to sound apologetic, bowing his head. He remained, bending his back until Zanali walked away to a safe distance from him. What a colossal bitch. Michael looked at her figure disappearing before resuming his journey to Tiriana's room adjacent to Captain's cabin. All guardians, be alert. The target has reached the loading area and is on its way to the interrogation room. All of a sudden, Michael heard a rough female voice echoing through the hallways. After navigating through the maze of a hallway, Michael finally reached a lavish wooden door flanked by 2 elites. The next door was also flanked by 2 elites, so, in total, there were 2 doors and 4 elites in front of him. It was kinda problematic since the 2 doors and guardian were standing next to each other. Luckily for Michael, no elites were inside the captain's cabin and Tiriana's room. He could see Tiriana curling into a ball on her bed while the captain read the map on a table. Thanks to his thermal vision enabled him to see through walls. Fortunately, Michael had the distracting copper coins and countless spiders in his storage. He put his hands behind his back, retrieving another spider and a coin. The spider grabbed the coin and crawled through Michael's legs, avoiding their gazes. The spider and the copper coin perfectly blended with the ruby red carpet they were standing on. You have a reason to be here? I'm making sure everything is in place. Alpha Guardian's orders. Michael was always prepared to kill them. It would only take him a couple of seconds to kill all of them, but he decided to deal with them stealthily instead of like a murdering maniac. Visits. For the best no_vel_read_ng experience anyone could kill, but only an assassin or a killer like Michael could kill with finesse. Ding. This time, the coin made a loud noise attracting the 4 guardians' attention. Did you hear that? One soldier at each door walked towards where the noise came from, leaving one behind as they should. Looking at the 2 soldiers at the door at a 3-meter distance and the 2 soldiers walking away, Michael cracked his neck. The very next moment, Michael dashed at the first soldier, slashing his throat with his hidden blade. Then, before the blood splashed onto the floor, Michael activated the death range and fired a powerful bolt of lightning through the other guardian's head. He didn't stop as he drew the sword on the Guardian's sheath and threw the sword at the Guardian, who turned back, hearing the thud sounds made by the two dead soldiers. The sword went straight through his head as soon as he turned around. Then, using the walls as his steps, Michael parkoured to the remaining Guardian. Xianxia. In mid-air, Michael pointed his finger as the golden lightning bolt shot out of his finger and went through the Guardian's throat, forming a hole in his neck. From slashing the first Guardian's throat with his hidden blade to killing the last one with the lightning bolt happened within 5 seconds. The elites couldn't even lift their fingers in front of his inhuman speed, technique, and strength boosted by the death range. Killing them was only half the battle, as Michael had to dispose of the bodies. Quickly, Michael dragged the 4 bodies while spraying the potion he brewed to clean the bloodshed onto the walls and the floor through a sprayer attached to the center of his gloves. Chapter 477 mentions the upgrades done to the armor. Michael looked around with his X-ray vision to see no one was coming his way. The captain in the cabin didn't seem like he heard a thing as he was still reading a map. Instead of going into the captain's cabin, Michael decided to greet Xianxia. But when he touched the doorknob, he felt an electric shock. System, unlock the door for me. After seeing the golden runes on the room, he realized Xianxia placed runes on the door to protect Xianxia. The system requires 6,000 badass points to disable the runes. Do it. A bright light shot out of Michael's hand to the door. Then, the glowing runes dimmed out in a few blinks of an eye. With a grin, Michael twisted the knob as the door opened with a crackling sound. He took a step inside the room and saw Xianxia curling into a ball on her white bed. Knock knock elf, your death is here, visits. For the best no_G experience. Xianxia, who heard these words weakly, opened her eyes. After Michael demonstrated his skills to Asian and Alred 3 days ago, he went to one of Michael's restaurant competitors, the Ruby Cuisine. Michael poisoned her food with blood tonic without her knowledge or anyone. Ever since that day, Michael has been controlling the nanites and causing her pain. Chapter 495 mentions Xianxia's arrival at Adrizel. Xianxia found the spiders because of Noah. They thought they found all the spiders in the warship except the one Michael left in Peyton's body. Michael knew they had found the spiders and tried to manipulate him by feeding him false information. But Peyton's dedication to catching him really surprised Michael. She really went all in, and if it wasn't for the spider in her body, Michael would have been in the interrogation room right now instead of in Xianxia's room. Who you are? She was so weak and barely uttered these words. Looking at Michael dragging the dead bodies, she tried to rise up from the bed but only to fail again and again. After dragging their bodies inside, Michael closed the door. You want to get up? Seeing Xianxia struggling and trying to reach for the dagger on a table beside the bed, Michael stepped toward the bed. Bang. With a single punch to the side of her face, Michael knocked out Xianxia. Now it's time to clear their bodies. Michael turned around, controlling the air in the room to lift the bodies into the sky. However, he couldn't lift the body in the air because of his weak wind manipulation rate. If he tried to use the dark flames to burn them without creating a wind cocoon around the bodies, the entire room would be on fire and soon the whole ship. Damn it. Michael yet again raised his hand as a small whirlwind appeared in the room, but he soon lost control over the whirlwind. Several sweat beads appeared on his forehead, but he still couldn't lift one body. Plan B then. Wind blast. Since he couldn't burn the bodies, Michael raised his hand, sending a powerful blast of wind. The wind blast hurled the bodies under Xianxia's bed. Although it wasn't the perfect hiding spot, no one would find the bodies unless one looked under the bed. Besides, Michael didn't need to keep the bodies hidden for long. Come here, sweetie pie. Michael lifted Xianxia from the bed in his arms. His next destination was closer, the captain's cabin. While walking out of the room, he looked around with his X-ray vision. Fortunately, no one was approaching. Blood bags and retractable dagger. Xianxia appeared in the corner of his vision. He saw her through the spy cam in the undead's eyes. Bravo! Michael chuckled as he arrived in front of the captain's cabin's door. Standing before the door, he put down Xianxia on her feet. Bang! Visits. For a better user experience, Michael kicked open the door, startling the plump bald man on the other side of the oak table. Move an inch, and I will break her neck. His face might be covered by the helmet, but it couldn't hide the killing intent in his voice. Who are you? The captain asked. Raise your arms in the sky, Michael calmly asked, but the captain seemed reluctant. With a flick of his wrist, Michael took out a dagger and placed it against Tiriana's neck. Okay. Seeing the knife against her neck, the captain immediately raised his arms over his head. Now, if you do everything I say when I say, you and she will live. Using his legs, Michael closed the door without taking his eyes off the man. You have no idea who you're messing with, the captain growled. Funny. I was about to say the same. Michel moved the dagger pointing at the captain. Lightning dash. Instantly, a lightning bolt shot out of his hand. The captain's body went rigid as the lightning bolt hit the wall behind him, just avoiding his head by a couple of inches. The captain stuttered in fear. Only one could use spells inside the void line, and it was the Dark Lord. Realizing the man before him might be the Dark Lord sent shivers running down his spine. He immediately began to tremble as he drenched his white robes with sweat. A rectangular box vaguely resembled a flight dashboard with several levers and colorful buttons a couple of meters behind the captain. Michael could see the endless crystal ocean outside through the windows above the console. Set the course to your headquarters in Drattle, or the next one goes through your head. Seeing the tiny lightning bolts dancing around his arm, the captain shivered. At that moment, the only thought the captain had was getting out of here alive. Unlike the rest of the ship, he wasn't an elite guardian. Tenulia hired him as the ship captain just a week ago, and if he knew he would be in the same room with the Dark Lord, he wouldn't have taken the damn job despite the handsome wage. He regretted leaving the Guardian Guild in Idrizel. Just don't kill me. The captain slowly walked backward, keeping his arms in the air. Don't give me a reason to, Michael calmly said. After reaching the dashboard, the captain pulsed the red lever and pressed some buttons on the dashboard. Visits. For the best no_vel_ed_ng experience, it's done. The captain turned around. Good. Michael nodded and stayed silent for a few moments. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Tenulia just unmasked the undead. It's showtime. Michael paid the system another 100 badass points. Soon, his silver armor faded into thin air, revealing his Lucifer armor. Instantly, the room lost all the light and grew darker. Now tell me, Captain, have you ever taken an innocent life? The captain was startled by his question. But, of course, he had taken innocent lives. During his visit to a village in Idrizel, he slapped a slave he bought from the southern continent to death because she refused to pleasure him. It was quite usual among the nobles. But he didn't dare to say anything to the Dark Lord. No, never. Fair enough, the captain sighed in relief. Though his relief only lasted a second as Michael cast the wind blast but manipulated the wind element to change the shape of the blast. He created a wind blade. It was his first time manipulating the wind element to transform the wind blast into a wind blade. His wind blade was surprisingly good enough to cleave the captain's head off his shoulder. The captain's headless body staggered around the room, spraying blood all over the room while his head hit the table with a sickening thud. He was lying, Michael told Tiriana as though she was awake. He moved on to put Tiriana on the oak table and took out a spider to record his message to Tenulia. After recording everything he wanted, he planned to send the feed to the mini projector he left in the undead's mouth. Tenulia would think it was a live feed. Still, in reality, it was a pre-recorded feed made by Michael to distract everyone. A few minutes later, Michael left the room, disguising himself as an elite guardian. The room was painted red with the captain and Tiriana's blood. To this moment, Tenulia had no idea her friend had exploded to death. Again, I wonder what your future Supreme Guardian has to say about your plan. Particularly the part where you endangered his little sister's life. Michael watched Azazel talk through the voice modulator attached to the undead's throat while going to the interrogation room. Michael was curious to see Tenulia's expression, and he was surprised when he saw the calm look on her face. They knew the vampires were going to kidnap her and force her to retrieve that key, Michael said to himself. If I am right, they are planning to kill the vampires after she retrieves the key. Then they will take the key from her. Michael was more curious about the key now. The vampires were desperate to find it, and the guardians also seemed interested in the key. What surprised Michael was that Tanulia hid the fact she was using Sabrina from Noah. Officer, Michael knew if Noah knew Tanulia put his sister in danger, he would put Tanulia through hell. But in case Michael knew Sabrina was his little sister, he would have massacred every single guardian on the ship and gone straight for Tanulia's head. Wondering what might the key unlock, Michael navigated through the corridors to the interrogation room visits. For the best no_vel_ed_G experience, hey, when he arrived in front of the mirror, a fellow elite guardian greeted him with a nod. None of them had an idea that the real Dark Lord was watching the interrogation with them. He stood with 4 other guardians while Zanali stood closer to the mirror a couple of feet in front of them. Gaia made him promise that he wouldn't kill Zanali. Otherwise, he would have killed her by now. And who are you, cat? To others, only Peyton, Tanulia, and the undead were in the room. However, there was another figure who remained invisible. Even the elites failed to see him as his invisibility cloak was much more powerful and better than the elite guardians. Michael saw his 7-foot figures via thermal vision. His figure vaguely resembled the tiger hybrid Jacoby he killed when Gaia returned from the Fire Realm. If his memory served him right, he might be the Black Panther beastmen he saw while watching Tanulia's warship feed. Chapter 469 mentioned the Black Panther beastman. Michael had a feeling that he was here to protect Tanulia if this went south. Michael also noticed a medallion on her neck, radiating immense power. System scanned that medallion. As usual, the system asked for 2,000 badass points. In a couple of moments, he heard back from the system. The system has finished the scan. The medallion contains a sophisticated rune that will teleport Tanulia to an unknown location in case her life is threatened. Why am I not surprised? It made sense to Michael. She was way high in the Guardian hierarchy, and they wouldn't let her come to the southern continent without any contingencies to save her life. Killing her would take much more time and preparation. All these medallions, runes, and guardians could only protect her for a short amount of time. As soon as Michael reaches the fusion stage, he would end her life regardless of whom or what she has to protect herself. The moment she destroyed the Silent Reaper, she sealed her fate. Set a course to Draddle. Elders will meet us there. Michael saw Tanulia turning her head and looking at Zanali. Zanali nodded at Tanulia before leaving for the captain's room, where Michael left some nice surprises for her. After Zanali left, Tanulia smacked her forehead. What am I thinking? Visits. For a better user experience, remove his mask. I want to see who is behind that mask. Tanulia ordered Peyton as the elites outside the room took a step forward. One of those elites was Michael. Sometime in the future, under the pitch-black sky, a castle menacingly stood in the middle of thousands of warriors. The sky was lit by the hundreds of fireballs, lightning bolts, and meteors sent by the mages down and in the air. The castle's black walls remained firm despite being bombarded by thousands of angry mobs. They all looked like ants in front of the giant castle. As far as one could see, there was nothing but scorched land around the castle, which was previously crowded with ancient forests. Suddenly, as they were sieging the castle vibrated, resonating an ear-piercing howling sound. Boom! As the sound traveled for hundreds of miles, a ring of dark flames expanded rapidly, burning everyone in the vicinity to ashes. Cast the light barrier. The hundreds of mages in white robes shouted as loud as they could and formed a human chain around the castle. Then, they all raised their staff towards the sky as it slowly split open to release a bright white light. Just as the bright light was coming from the sky, a dark mist surrounded the castle, turning the surroundings darker than before. At the same time, thousands of warships were approaching the castle on the horizon. The staff of the mages began to radiate a dim light on the ground. Soon, the dim light weaved a shield in front of them. When the dark flames met the shield, its movement was halted. The dark flames tried to push through the force field as cracks formed in the white shield. Fighting one of the most powerful primordial flames, the immortal mages broke into a sweat. Meanwhile, in one of the warships approaching the castle, a golden-haired man was staring at the map of the dark forest. Several other men adorned with golden armor stood around the large oak table, and they all bore serious expressions on their faces. "General Evan, what are your next orders?" one of the golden-armored warriors asked General Evan Clark. "Push forward. Permission to speak freely, General," another golden-armored warrior asked General Clark. Permission granted. When Evan nodded, the soldier removed his golden helmet to reveal her alluring face and striking golden hair. Despite their real age, they all looked like they were in their early 30s because of their cultivation levels. "Evan, why are we sending half of our troops to the castle where we know the Dark Lord isn't?" "We all know the Dark Lord is in the crypt. Visits." For the best no_vil__G experience, the other soldiers didn't speak a word, but they all agreed with her. Unlike her, they couldn't ask the general so freely. "Because we have someone far more important in that castle who could end this war forever." The soldiers were stunned as Evan let out a deep breath. "Listen to me, men. I was instructed not to disclose the information until I got the confirmation. Now that I received it from the Queen, it's time for you to know our real objective." Everyone's gaze was on Evan for what he was about to tell them. But, instead of explaining, Evan flicked his wrist as a holographic image of an infant child appeared above the table. "We have confirmation that the Dark Child is in the castle." The golden-haired lattice eyes went wide as the others looked pale behind their helmets. It's a rumor, isn't it?" A soldier stuttered, trembling in fear. "It's not a rumor. The Dark Child is real. Our orders are to kill the Dark Child no matter the cost." The soldiers were stunned by his words as the golden-haired woman strolled to Evan from the other side of the table. "Even if it's the spawn of the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen, we don't kill a child, Evan. We are no different than the Dark Lord if we did that," she gravely said. "Orders are orders, Victoria, and this order came directly from the Queen." "Evan it's General Evan, Captain Victoria." Evan cut her off in the middle before she could finish her sentence. "Yes, General." Her eyes showed reluctance, but she decided to follow his lead. Because he was not only the general but also her husband. "General, if the Dark Child is in the castle, the Dark Queen won't be too far. We have no idea about her whereabouts. But expect high resistance from the Dark Lord's army. They wouldn't let us kill the child so easily." With another flick of his wrist, the child's image disappeared, and the castle appeared before them. Evan pointed to a red dot on the far east side of the castle where the castle's fire-breathing tower was located. The tower was built to resemble a sleeping dragon and breathed fire through its mouth. "This is our inn. The nightmare tower breath fire every 10 seconds, and when it's getting ready for the next breath, we will fly into its mouth. Place these charges." Evan's ring on his finger let out a dim glow as several dark bricks appeared on the table. "Destroy the tower and fight our way to the center where we believe the child is," Evan said. "The latest _AP_SODIs are on _this website." To this day, no one has stepped into the castle because of the fear toxin. So we are going in blind. Expect Alpha Undead, the Dark Assassins, and every type of Dark Lord's army to be inside. Although Evan heard no disagreement with the plan, he knew the meaning of their silence. He had been leading the troops for years, and they didn't have to use words to speak their minds. Instead, Evan could understand them. Anyone with a brain could tell that the plan was suicide, yet the orders directly came from the Queen herself. The Queen's words were absolute. They wouldn't have stood a chance against the Dark Lord without her. Her courageous leadership and the God of Light's power made fighting the Dark Lord possible. When he first heard he had to kill a child, Evan immediately opposed the order, just like Victoria. However, the Queen showed him the future. The Dark Child held the key to opening the portals to the other universes. According to the Queen, the Dark Lord was planning to revive the ancient gods to life again. If the portal is opened, the Dark Lord can travel between the universes in his physical form. Once it happened, no one can stop the Dark Lord, not even the God of Light. Evan recalled the Queen's words. The Dark Lord must not revive the ancient gods. Evan, ancient gods. Evan mumbled under his breath. The Queen had never looked so serious before. But when she spoke about the ancient gods, Evan saw the fear in her eyes. General, the soldiers shouted, stopping Evan's train of thoughts. "I know it sounds like a suicide mission, and most of us won't survive the battle. But no matter what, We must reach the child and end its life before it ends our world. Evan paused for a moment before continuing. While we are fighting our way through the castle, our remaining forces will focus on sieging the castle in all directions. This would keep the Dark Lord's forces busy and give us some breathing room. What about the Dark Lord General? Victoria raised a question. If he decides to show up, you know our plan will go down the drain. Just a thought of the Dark Lord appearing gave them chills. The last time the Dark Lord appeared, he killed 3,000 elites of the Great 8 clans and 100 immortals in a few seconds like they were nothing. We don't have to worry about him. The Queen will keep him busy. Once we place these charges, it will turn off the castle's defense mechanisms for 20 minutes. Even after explaining the plan, something felt off to Even, like it's just a tiny part of the Queen's plan. I don't like this plan, not even a bit. But we will follow you to the Hell Realm itself, General. Victoria placed her hand on her chest and spoke loud and clear. It's been an honor working with you people, Evan said, looking at each and every one of his men and women who fought beside him for more than 10 years. Visit. For a better user experience, General Evan, a white-robed man, entered the room. We will reach our destination in 5 minutes. Evan nodded as the man left the room, leaving them to their meeting. Leave us alone and regroup at the cargo bay in 4 minutes. The soldiers bowed and left the room, leaving Victoria and Evan alone. You don't like this plan, do you, Evan? Victoria walked toward Evan with a gentle smile on her face to calm him down. She placed her hand on his shoulder. Well, get through this, Evan. We always do. Evan lost his general domineer as he tilted his head, resting his head on her hand. Don't hate me for making you do this, Victoria, Evan said in an apologetic tone. You're just following orders, Evan. I know. My only question is, why can't we take the child hostage and force the Dark Lord to surrender? Too many variables, the Queen said. She said the child would let the Dark Lord travel between universes in his physical form, Victoria. Once it happens, she said he could revive the ancient gods. I feel like there is more to the ancient gods than we know of, Evan. Do you remember the rumors that an ancient god revived the god of light? Victoria asked as Evan sighed. He took his head off her hand and looked at the castle in the distance through the windows. It's just a rumor, Victoria. All the ancients' gods have been in an eternal slumber. It's what the Queen said. Victoria's brow arched up. We cannot doubt the Queen now, Victoria, not when we are so close to ending the war. Evan took his gaze away from the castle and looked Victoria in the eyes. Oh, come on, Evan. She rolled her eyes. The odds are we are going to die today. So we can speak freely. Look, I don't trust and worship the Queen as you and the others do. She and I have a common enemy, the Dark Lord. Her leadership is what gave us a fighting chance against him. I give her that. But that doesn't mean we have to trust her blindly. There's nothing wrong with questioning her, Evan. Evan knew Victoria had always been skeptical about the Queen and the information she's been providing them. But, of course, the majority of the people believed and worshipped the Queen. But a few people like Victoria questioned the Queen's motives. I don't think the Dark Lord will literally go to hell and heaven to revive good guys, Victoria. Whatever these ancient gods are, they are bad news, said Evan. But I still remember Layla's last words, Evan. You weren't there. Layla was about to say something about the ancient god, but the Queen killed her. Victoria emphasized the word the. I can still hear her last words and her smile, Evan. Every night I closed my eyes, I could see her smiling even when she knew she was going to die. Visits. For the best no understanding experience, Victoria's eyes watered without her control as she recalled Layla's last words. The ancient god Dawn is coming for you. Inside the dark castle was dark room lit with crimson red light. There was nothing in the room except a sizable black bed, a cradle near the bed, and a large mirror facing the bed's head. Arg, a woman dressed in entirely black armor growled, struggling to reach for the child crying in the cradle. She held her stomach in one hand and used the other hand to move toward the child. The baby kept crying for its mother, and only when the woman touched the child it stopped crying. Come here. Gritting her teeth to fight the pain, he gently lifted the baby from the cradle and placed it on her chest. Who hurt my butterball? She kissed the baby. As though the baby sensed its mother's pain, it tried to reach out for her face with its tiny soft hands. My lady. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared in the room near the cradle. The ghostly figure resembled a middle-aged man in a butler uniform. His glowing ruby eyes were the main attraction to his face other than his raven black hair. "You're awake. Didn't I tell you stop appearing suddenly?" It freaked him out. Azazel. Yes, the butler was Azazel, and the woman was none other than Gaia. After hearing her complaint, Azazel embarrassedly smiled. "I heard him cry, my lady. How is the funeral?" Gaia's voice was heavy. The question made the smile on Azazel's face fade away instantly. They had lost a valuable member 2 days ago. The entire castle and the army mourned the loss. "The assassins took it pretty hard, my lady," Azazel said as Gaia sighed. "I can't blame them. She practically raised them. May her soul rest in peace." Gaia stood up with the child resting on her chest. "Here." With a flick of her wrist, she took out a silver medallion which had the name Aria Atronius engraved in golden letters. "Place this on her grave." A dim light emerged from Azazel's hand, engulfing the medallion. Then, the light disappeared along with the medallion in Gaia's hand. "My lady, we cannot stay here for long. Our informants in the Sky Hall said they dispatched several demigods to siege the castle. I don't think we can hold them off." Gaia's face turned gloomy as the child began to cry again. "No, Butterball. I'm not going to let anyone in your home." She lifted the baby gently in the air and smiled at him. "Visits." For the best experience seeing her smile, the baby stopped crying. "I can take them down if our defenses failed." "No, you cannot, my lady. Not with the curse on your body. You need to rest until my lord finds a way to lift the curse." Azazel's voice almost sounded like he was ordering Gaia. He had seen enough deaths recently and would rather die than see something happens to the Dark Queen. He should be leading the army against that bitch instead of wasting his time trying to lift my curse. Her voice slightly stuttered. "Should I inform my lord about Lady Adria's death, my lady?" And Gaia immediately raised her voice as the lights began to flicker. "He still hasn't gotten over Nightmare's death. If you inform him that Arya is dead, he will lose it. We have to give him strength, not weaknesses." Her eyes watered up, thinking that Nightmare was no longer with them. Yet, every time she closed her eyes, she could see her memories of Nightmare flash across her eyes. It felt like yesterday they won Nightmare in a bet against Jane Totunk. In a blink of an eye, 200 years passed by. However, when she thought Nightmare died, defending Rivertown by himself made her proud. He defended Rivertown for 3 days from Sky Hall. Even after using almost every resource they had, the Sky Hall failed to take over the Rivertown. He burned hundreds of half-immortals before falling to the dragon hunters of the Queen. After seeing Nightmare's lifeless body, Gaia went on a killing spree and did not stop until every single dragon hunter lost their head. She thought killing the dragon hunters would make her feel better. But she didn't. The loss of Nightmare was something she could easily handle. Boom. All of a sudden, the entire castle trembled violently as Gaia was thrown off balance. Luckily, she quickly grabbed the bed in one hand to steady herself. Immediately Azazel disappeared from the room to check what was happening. At that time, the baby in her hand began to cry, sensing the danger approaching it. When the tremor stopped, the mirror before the bed flickered, revealing the Dark Lord's face. "Michael!" Straight away, his face put a smile on her face. She sighed in relief. "Papa!" The baby tried to reach for him. "Hey little guy." Michael smiled at the baby. Despite his smile, Gaia could see the pain in his eyes. Being the Dark Lord wasn't his choice. Rather, the Sky Hall pushed him to be one. They needed a villain so they could be the saviors. The Michael in front of her was not the Michael she met. He was funny, calm and relaxed person. However, ever since he took the mantle of the Dark Lord, he changed into a whole different person. Of course not by choice, but the pressure, danger and the responsibility of saving the world took its toll on both his mind and body. "Gaia, you have to use the key now." The moment Gaia heard these words, her mind went blank. "Visits?" For the best experience, there is no way, Gaia. The Queen is more powerful than we thought. I don't think I can hold her off much longer. Don't play with me, human." "My lady." Azazel appeared yet again in the room, but unlike before, his ghostly figure kept flickering. My lord, when he noticed Michael in the mirror, Azazel weakly bowed. The elites are there, aren't they? Michael asked as Azazel nodded. Code 0 is a go, Azazel. Gaia saw Azazel's ghostly figure turning red. What is Code 0? Gaia gawked at Azazel and Michael, having no idea of Code 0. But seeing the grave look on their faces, she lost all the color on her face. She held the baby tightly in her arms. It's been an honor serving you, my lord. Azazel's voice stuttered. I wish I had seen him grow up to be a fine young man. Azazel let out a miserable smile as his face was plastered with grief and sadness. Yet, when Gaia looked into his eyes, she saw nothing but fulfillment. Azazel, goodbye, my lady. Boom. Gaia saw Azazel explode into a puff of smoke. Her jaw dropped while her legs turned jelly. Soon, in front of her eyes, the white smoke formed a portal. Use the key on him, Gaia. She dropped to her knees, tears gushing out of her pale face. No, there has to be another way, human. You always find a way. Michael's eyes watered as his eyes watered. This is the only way, Gaia. We can stop everything. We can stop the queen before it came into existence. What about me? What about our child? What about our existence? Gaia's tears rained down on the baby's face. The little one reached out to Gaia's face and wiped off the tears with his little hand. If we don't do this, she will use him to open portals to other universes. He will suffer for eternity, Gaia. Cough. Suddenly, Gaia coughed up blood. The excruciating pain caused by the curse returned. Trust my Gaia. This is the only way. Use the key and send him to Etheria before they get to him. He will cease to exist if I activate the machine before you send him there. Visits. For the best no__G experience, Etheria is the universe of anti-hero with a symbiote system. No, no, no. Her voice stuttered. Gaia held the baby as tight as she could. Compared to the pain of leaving her son, the pain caused by the curse was nothing. His innocent face that stared at her blankly without any idea clenched her heart. Boom, boom, boom. The castle yet again trembled violently. If you don't do this, he's good as dead, Gaia. Use that key now. Michael's shout stopped the castle from shaking. His shout just killed hundreds of half-immortals who approached Gaia's room. If he hadn't used his strength trying to revive the ancient gods, he could have single-handedly wiped off the queen's army. However, even with the system's help, it was impossible to kill the queen without the ancient gods and Hunter. Hunter is the MC of Dictator with a badass system. The queen was not a being that belonged to a single universe. Instead, according to Ancient God Knight, she split her soul into pieces and sent each piece to a universe. To kill her, one must kill all the soul pieces. Otherwise, she would born again and again until she turns the entire universe into mindless minions whose sole purpose is worshipping her and conquering the worlds. Michael temporarily sealed his universe using 2 billion badass points, preventing the queen from opening portals to the universes she had already conquered. His son held the key to open the universe, and the queen would stop at nothing until she gets to him. With the system offline and half of his army wiped out, sending his son to Etheria and using the Silver Hawk was the only way to stop the queen. Silver Hawk was his reset button. This time, Michael would correct the mistakes he made. Tears kept gushing out of her eyes when she slowly removed the tiny golden key hanging around the baby's neck. Your father and I love you so much. No matter what it takes, we will find you. She kissed the baby's forehead softly. I am sorry, little guy. I wish things have gone different. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, letting out the tears he was holding. We will fix everything, Gaia. I promise you. I will save Nightmare, Cindy, Azazel, and everyone. Michael's eyes turned blood red and Gaia saw everything turning darker. Removing the key from his neck, Gaia threw it into the portal Azazel created by sacrificing himself. As soon as she threw the key inside, the dark portal turned golden. No matter where you are, my love will always protect you, Butterball. She walked toward the portal carrying her son in her arms. Her body trembled, and it took all her strength even to take a step forward. Standing only a couple of inches away from the portal, she softly kissed his forehead. Then, they both locked their gazes with the baby. Goodbye, Draven. Visits. for a better user experience. Chapter 525 The Hunt for the Key has begun. Present. The sun rose from its lazy slumber on the horizon, blessing the majestic Akilun realm with its golden light. Basked in the golden light, the silver stone walls of Mazeroth Castle reflected the sunlight like a mirror. The morning birds chirped away from the forest in search of food with the hope of a new day. But compared to the birds, the people were lazy as hell. Except for early birds such as Kayla Martin and Gilrine, the others clung to their hot blanket on their beds. In one of the professor's rooms, Gaia abruptly rose up from her bed, drenched in her own sweat. She gasped as she breathed heavily up as her chest rose up and down frantically. She ran her hands through her face, breast, and arms like she was searching for something on her. What the fuck? What in the actual fuck? What in the goddamn actual fucking fuck? She cursed relentlessly before tossing the soft blanket away. Her room was not as big as the one in the dark forest. However, it was cozy, stone-floored, and warmed by the fireplace on the wall opposite the square table and chair for her to study. The sunlight peeked through the windows covered by navy blue curtains, making the sweat beads on her face sparkle like stars in the night sky. Only the night sky was her rosy face. She looked tense as she quickly tied her long, raven black hair into a ponytail. Then she flicked her wrist as the earpiece materialized on her palm. She put the earpiece into the ear, connected to Michael, and waited for him to answer. "Hey Snakey, what's up?" She heard Michael's charmingly cheery voice. "I had a dream," she exclaimed. "Okay. Your voice tells me it's not a good dream." Gaia wanted to tell what she dreamt of. However, most of the details became hazy as she couldn't remember everything except her son's face. "I can't remember his name, what was it? My son," she began to blabber. "Take a deep breath." Michael's voice turned rather serious. "We had a son in my dreams, something happened, we lost." She talked in broken sentences. Taking Michael's advice, she calmed herself by taking a few long deep breaths. Obviously, she knew what she experienced was a bad dream. Still, it felt so real. The feeling of throwing her son into a golden portal and the sight of Michael's body withering into dust was etched into her mind. "Now tell me what you dreamt," Michael asked after Gaia's breathing became normal. She stood up, walking to the windows. She then slid open the windows to let the morning light shine on her face. The beautiful sight of lush green land, the crystal blue lake, and the forest surrounding the castle soothed her soul. "I can't remember everything, Michael. But it felt so real. We had a son. I can remember his innocent face but not his name. Something happened, and I threw him into a golden portal. I can vaguely remember we were at war and I had this pain all over my body. Hey, listen to me. It's just a dream. Last night we were talking about Sky Hall and having a family. That's the reason for your dream. Just don't worry, okay? I am here." His calm words always reassured her and gave her courage. This time wasn't an exception. "Hey, are you talking to Gaia? Let us talk to her." "Give that to me." Gaia heard Iag's shout, which put a delicate smile on her face. "Don't make me flick you, Iag. Just wait until I finish." "Okay, but finish quickly. You were talking for hours last night." "It's our turn now." Iag reluctantly agreed not to bother him until he finished talking to Gaia. "What if everything I saw happened human? What if it was the future? You said there's a possibility your future self traveled back in time just like Xianxia." Sigh. Gaia heard him sigh. "Listen. If I traveled back in time, the future us don't exist anymore. The last thing we need is to worry about the future that doesn't even happen. Just calm down and think about what we should do when you return." Gaia sensed a tinge of mischief in his voice. "You're not gonna get anything until we get married. So don't get your hopes up, perf." Gaia giggled, forgetting everything about the dream for a few moments. "Now tell me, where are you?" Gaia asked. "After talking to you, I will return to the ship to join Olivia. Corey's men would be there in an hour." "So what's your cover?" asked Gaia. Last night they spent talking about the vampires, Sky Hall, and finally having a family where Michael avoided the topic by telling her he feels sleepy. To be honest, Michael had no plans to have kids, especially after knowing everything about his enemies. However, There was no doubt in his mind they would use his child to get to him. On the contrary, Gaia wanted not one but a bunch of them. If he won the war against everyone, he might grant her wish. But not before that. Well, Corey's men would attack our ship and take me hostage, Michael calmly said. You can't let Olivia ruin your plans by bringing backup from Elon or informing the Guardians. I will deal with that. You better be back in the dark forest when I return, Gaia threatened him playfully. She couldn't wait to reunite with him. The few weeks without him felt like an eternity. I don't think getting the key would take more than a week. Since Noah risked his life to save mine, ID returned the favor by saving his little sister. When the elder vampire exploded, Noah jumped in front of him, forming a light shield around Michael. Although Michael could have teleported away from the arena, Noah risked his life to save him. That was the first time someone risked their life to save him. But, for some reason, Michael felt indebted to Noah. He hated that feeling. Hence, he decided to get the key as well as save Sabrina so he could destroy the nagging feeling of being indebted to someone. Little did he know that it wasn't a feeling of being indebted but a little sister's calling for her big brother for help. So even though Michael was separated from his family by Skyhall, they couldn't completely destroy the bond between him and his family. Where is Nightmare? Michael asked, changing the topic. He got into trouble with some other familiars. Nothing to be worried about, don't meddle with it. He needs to experience life alone. After everything was said and done, Michael gave the earpiece to Vidora. While they were talking to Gaia, Michael focused on brewing a few potions to fight the vampires. Since he planned to go in as Ghost rather than as the Dark Lord, he needed potions to fight the vampires. The dark flames danced over his hand, continuously spitting our crimson-red beads into the air. Michael merged all the beds into one and soon, they all split into several blood-red pills. Looking at the glowing crimson-red pills in the air, Michael grinned. I shall name you Berserker Pills. Michael placed the pills on the table before removing the black bracelet from his wrist. Then he slid open the cover to reveal an empty box with several runes glowing on the bottom. He slowly picked the pills one by one and placed them into the box. My lord, my men have seen your ship. I am waiting for your command. Do not attack until I say. Michael fitted the APD around his wrist. It's showtime. Michael turned around to look at Vidora. My lord, out of the blue, Azazel appeared in the room. As usual, the demon butler greeted Michael with a bow. Monitor and record everything, Azazel. He stood up from his chair. And Corey, guard the waters all time. Follow me after I get to the target, and do not let anyone follow us. Yes, my lord. Corey agreed as expected. Since Michael had done everything he had to before leaving for Sabrina's ship, he threw a glance at Vidora and Azazel. Then he willed the system to teleport him back to Olivia's ship. Then, in a blink of an eye, he vanished into thin air, leaving Azazel and Vidora behind. The waves crashed with the ship, continually shaking the ship left and right without giving it a break. Still, Olivia remained on the upper deck watching the raging storm with her emerald green eyes. The clouds cast shadows dark enough to make anyone think it was dawn. At that moment, no one except for Olivia was on the upper deck. The sailors asked her to return to her cabin, but she outright refused them. After what happened in Adrizel, she needed to be alone. The adrenaline kept her from losing her mind in overwhelming terror when she was in the arena. Since the adrenaline rush had died down, the terror slowly clenched her heart. The sight of vampires killing and sucking the victims' necks kept flashing across her eyes. The competition was supposed to be one of the most guarded events considering important people such as Eve Voldegard, Gabriel, and Hendrix were there. Nonetheless, the vampires massacred everyone and killed 80% of the alchemists in Elon and Azair. If she was in the spectators' stand instead of Ghost's side, she might have been a victim of a vampire. The thought gave her chills. Olivia, she snapped back from her thoughts when he felt a touch on her shoulder. She quickly jerked her head to the side to see Ghost standing beside her. What are you doing up here? You should be in your quarters. His calm expression held no worries or no trauma, and his eyes looked as calm as ever. He seemed like nothing had happened. You almost died, Olivia muttered. You are still in shock. Michael squeezed her shoulder. The feeling would go away eventually after you reached the sect. The world is a dangerous place, Olivia. That's why you have to be stronger. Both mentally and physically, Michael tried to calm her down while watching the vague silhouette of a ship approaching them. Unfortunately, Olivia couldn't see the ship due to the storm blocking her view. Are we truly safe anymore? The vampires, they killed Eva's guards like nothing. Even though I didn't know their cultivation level, they might be at least soul-refining stage warriors. She shivered. Everyone has weakness, Olivia, and the vampires aren't an exception. I am pretty sure Noah and his guardian buddies would soon find a way to neutralize the vampire problem. Don't let the fear get to your head. He let his words sink into her brain. The storm is getting worse. He emphasized the word storm. That was the key word for green-lighting the attack. As you wish, my lord, he heard Corey's voice in his head. Chapter 526 The One Who Hunted the Vampires to Extinction. Meanwhile, the vampires gathered around in a large spacious hall lit dimly with crimson-red chandeliers. They all stared at the elder vampire standing on the raised platform. The plumy brown-haired vampire paced left and right with his hands behind his back. Just looking at the deep frown on his face, one could tell the elder vampire was concerned about something. I always had low expectations of him. But holy fuck! The elder vampire sneered as two tall women robed in dark clothes approached him. Elder Hacken. The two women knelt in front of him as Hacken stopped pacing back and forth for a while. What is it? Elder Saber has reached our. He advised you to leave the castle and join him in Kingdom Chinland. One of the women informed Hacken indifferently. Did he tell you anything about what happened in Idrizel? Elder Saber said it's a matter for the council. Hacken exhaled deeply. To be honest, he expected the council to butt in after the stunt Griswold pulled in Idrizel. All the elder vampires wanted payback on Guardians for exposing them, but none of them dared to wage war on them so openly except Griswold. Against all the elder vampires' advice, he attacked the alchemy competition in Idrizel and, shockingly, self-destructed himself. But, since Griswold was one of Hacken's adopted sons, Hacken had to answer the council's questions. Vampires were no different than the rest in terms of politics. Just a simple mishap and the other vampires would be gunning for Hacken's seat at the table. Griswold gave those vampires a weapon to use against him in the council meeting. While the situation tensed Hacken, the vampires in the hall gawked at him, having no idea why they were summoned. At least 50 vampires were staring at Hacken for some answers. Tell Saber, I'll be on my way after tying up some loose ends in Idrizel. We are here to assist you on that, Elder Hacken, the women said in unison. With a long deep sigh, Hacken finally turned around to look at the vampires in the hall before him. They all went dead silent when they saw Hacken's gaze sweeping over them. Look, I'm not big on speeches. I summoned you all because I have an order for all of you. As you may or may not know, Griswold attacked the alchemy competition and died in the process. Although what he did was extremely stupid, he was one of us. So we have to avenge him and make those who killed him pay. Hacken's cold voice resonated in the hall. Anyone who brings me the heads of Noah, a guardian, and Ghost, a 5-star alchemist, would receive the blessing to become an elder. As soon as the vampires heard Hacken, the vampires gasped in shock. Immediately their eyes were lit with excitement. Being an elder meant bigger hunting grounds and more power. No vampire would say no to those two things. Any vampire would literally kill another vampire to get bigger hunting grounds and power. Noah Winston is on his way to his home in Pentown. Ghost is in a merchant ship named Mary's Weather. According to our spies, his destination is Sunrise Sect in Bradford. Hacken had more information about Ghost to share with his minions. However, before sharing everything, his butler entered the stage through the door behind him. Lord Hacken. Hacken looked over his shoulder to see his butler, a gray-robed white-haired man who seemed thin as a stick. You have to see this, the butler said gravely, sensing the seriousness in his voice. Hacken turned around. Then, the old man took out an orb with a flick of his wrist. Hacken and the two women saw the castle's outskirts in the orb. When Hacken looked closer, he saw a black armored figure slaughtering his minions and approaching the castle. What the heck? Hacken was stunned as the black armored figure chopped down his minions' heads like vegetables. "We are under attack." The two women stood up to their feet, whereas Hakan began to shiver uncontrollably when he placed his hand on the orb and zoomed into taking a closer look at the figure. It was a woman whose raven black hair danced around her shoulder along with the two dark swords in her hands. The two black swords brought back memories Hakan desperately wanted to forget. He could feel the sweat running down his back as the two women noticed Hakan's breathing getting heavier and heavier. Elder Hakan. Hakan's mind went totally blank as he didn't even hear the two women calling for him. "Can't be, she's dead, she's dead." He kept mumbling. Meanwhile, the black-armored woman wreaked havoc among the vampires outside. Despite the metal armor she wore from toe to neck, the armor didn't seem to restrict her movements. The two women and the butlers saw her cutting the vampires' heads off without using any spells. Suddenly the glass orb cracked as the women looked up. Her eyes met Hakan's before the glass orb completely shattered into pieces. "Everyone leave." Hakan's sudden shout reverberated through the hall, leaving the vampires stunned. He didn't bother to stay any longer and explain what was happening. Instead, he decided to escape the castle. But just as he was about to take a step toward the door, the metal door in the hall exploded. The force of the explosion sent the metal door crashing onto the vampires. The heavy door crushed a few vampires into a pulpy mess. The vampires jerked around to see a mist of cloud blocking the entrance. A few seconds later, the woman entered the hall through the smoke. The vampires noticed the blood dripping down from her black sword. For a few moments, the vampires remained still like her dark eyes petrified them. Then, quickly the vampires snapped back to reality as they snarled at her, revealing their razor-sharp fangs. Human scum. An overly violent vampire leaped at the woman. Pulch! The vampire was in mid-air when she swayed her body to the side before swinging her sword. The next moment, the vampire's head separated from his body, hit the ground with a sickening thud while the body sprayed blood all over the place. Most of the vampires didn't even realize what just happened. She was too fast. They just saw a blue, and their fellow clansman lost his head. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Her cold words broke the silence haunting the hall. Hakan's heart jumped out of his heart when he heard these words. Then, losing control over his body, Hakan stumbled back. He almost collapsed if it wasn't for his butler's quick reflex to grab Hakan by his shoulder. "How I wonder what you are." She took a step forward with each word escaping her mouth. "Kill the intruder." The two women shouted at the vampires as the vampires flanked the women from all directions. However, she raised her two swords before they could get closer to her. The swords vibrated, letting out a high-pitched whistling sound penetrated everyone's head. Some vampires dropped to their knees, covering their ears. Boom! Suddenly, a bright light shot out of her swords as everyone in the hall, without exception, closed their eyes. Ag! The muffled grunts turned into loud screams of agony. Hakan could feel the temperature in the room skyrocketing. When the whistling sound trailed off, he barely opened his eyes, only to see half of the vampires in the hall were reduced to ashes. The others all squirmed on the floor, crying and moaning in pain. The smell of burning flesh nauseated Hakan. The bright flames dancing around her swords shocked Hakan more than the pile of ashes. Primordial flames. Even from 20 meters away from the woman, Hakan could feel his skin being burnt by the flames. He couldn't keep his gaze locked on the flame as the fire was too bright. Even the sun seemed dim compared to the flames dancing around her sword. Additionally, the flames let out an ominous howling. Up above the world so high, she gracefully walked towards Hakan as the two vampire women poised to attack the black-armored woman. Harriet? Hakan mumbled as he kept walking backward. As she was getting closer to them, the vampires on the ground failed to stop her. That meant saving Elder Hakan has become their responsibility. Hence, the two women closed their eyes as a red mist enveloped them. The next moment, they leaped at Harriet from the stage, showing their razor-sharp fangs. The bloodlust in their eyes made their eyes glow like rubies. The two women were extremely fast as they left after images on the stage. Like a diamond in the sky. Just as they were in midair, Harriet finished her rhyme. The two women were fast, but Harriet was faster. Finally, she just swung her sword, sending a crescent wave of light flames, the only primordial flame that stood beside the dark flames in the power hierarchy. Hakan witnessed Saber's powerful minions burnt to ashes in a mere moment right before his eyes. The two women didn't even have time to scream before they turned into nothing but ashes. Harriet did not stop with killing the two women. Instead, she swirled, sending a stream of light flames out of her swords. Arg! The rest of the vampires' growls and moans were abruptly cut short as they all turned into piles of ashes. 52 vampires were obliterated in a few moments. Who? You? The butler who stood beside Hakan stuttered. 25 years ago, what did I tell you? Harriet asked Hakan. Instead of responding to the butler's question, Hakan's face turned paler than usual as he panted. Harriet raised her sword, pointing at the butler, and burnt him to ashes by firing a quick bolt of light flame. The fire burnt not only the butler but also Hakan's silk robes. Fearing for his life, he stood naked before her. What did? She uttered each word with frightening killing intent. No, 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 no. Hakan was one of the most powerful elder vampires yet in front of her. He felt so powerless and couldn't control his body from shivering. Hakan still had nightmares about what happened 25 years ago. Harriet Hunt. Hakan wished to wake up whenever he went to bed without recalling the name. Harriet Hunt was why the vampires called the 9th month of the year the Black Month. Once upon a time, R was full of his kind. Until an elder vampire tried to satiate his hunger with the blood of one of the Hunt sisters. Little did the elder vampire know that his actions would get the attention of the most feared woman in all of R, Harriet Hunt. She relentlessly hunted his kind to near extinction in a month of time. Hakan and a few others were the only survivors, not because they escaped but because Skyhall brokered peace between Harriet and the council. I told you, she reached the stage with a swift leap. Seeing her up close, he stumbled back and fell to the floor. If you or any of your kind even think of hurting my family, I would hunt you down. Chapter 527 Kidnapping Ghost. Having no idea, his mother just wiped off Hakan and his horde of vampires who were ordered to hunt him down. Michael waited for Corey's men to attack the ship he was on. The storm raged on, forcing them to hold onto the wooden rails. The howling wind partnered up with the heavy rain to create a tornado that grew in size with each passing second. We have to get down. Michael had to raise his voice to make his words reach Olivia's ears. Go! Michael shouted at her. However, the order wasn't only for her but for Corey's men as well. Boom! The thunderclap resonated in the ocean, followed by the lightning crack that looked as though it was splitting open the sky itself. Olivia quickly manipulated the arch energy beneath her feet to fly towards the latch on the ship's center. Boom! Another loud booming sounded throughout the ocean, but this time, there was no lightning. Instead, the entire ship trembled violently as Olivia was thrown off onto the wet floor. We are under attack. Michael shouted, dashing at Olivia. Quick, quick, quick. He helped her up while keeping his head down. Boom. 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 Corey's men bombarded the ship relentlessly. What's happening? Olivia shouted. Someone's attacking the ship. As Michael shouted, Olivia looked over his shoulder to see a man of war slowly emerging through the hazy mist created by the storm. Everyone around them grew darker because of the man of war's shadow. Compared to the huge man of war, their merchant ship looked minuscule. Michael turned around, looking at the man of war slowly getting closer to their merchant ship. She really want to surprise me, Michael thought while looking at the man of war slowly positioning itself adjacent to the merchant ship so they could jump on board. Meanwhile, the crews who went to rest down decks rushed outside, stunned by the sight of the man of war. The crew shuddered. Oh my God! A man-o'-war! Where is the captain? What are we gonna do? They are onboarding us. Michael saw several grappling hooks being thrown at their ship, and a few of them got stuck to the rails. Soon, the crew of man of war reached their ship, sliding through the ropes attached to the grappling hooks. In a few moments, the empty upper deck became crowded with the crews of both ships. The merchant ship crew reluctantly unsheathed their swords, which were rusty and broken. Since the merchant ship traveled between the cultivation continents, they barely had any attacks. Thus, the crew didn't bother to purchase new swords or spells. The storm seemed to have slowed down thanks to the man of war shielding them from the raging storm. The merchant ship crew stared at Michael, expecting him to fight the intruders, including the captain who just arrived at the scene. Instead, the man couldn't even stand firm on the ground as he swayed like a tree in the wind. He was thin as a twig and Michael wondered how he managed to become a captain. Boom! Suddenly, a sturdy man jumped down onto the ship, making the ship violently sway left and right. Contrary to the merchant ship captain, the man who just jumped the ship looked taller and bulkier than an average human. His exposed upper body was riddled with Mayan tattoos just like Corey. The man had dark brown eyes complementing his brown curly hair. "Give me that man without resisting, and I will spare your lives." The man spoke in a thick accent and pointed at Michael. Olivia was terrified by his words. Not a day passed since the Adrisal massacre, yet she saw someone else asking for Ghost. "Who are you?" Michael asked, slowly helping Olivia to her feet. "Come with us." Instead of revealing his identity, the tan-skinned warrior replied to Michael, "Otherwise, we will sink everyone to the fucking bottom." "I doubt there are any core formation cultivators among the crew to fly away," the man snickered. He was right. As far as Michael could see, except for him and Olivia, not a single one was above the body refining stage. "Do I have to believe that you would spare them if I agreed to come with you?" Michael asked, tilting his head. "You don't have a choice, Ghost." As the man said, Michael heard creaking noises resonating in the air. He turned his head to see the countless cannons of the man of war slowly poking out. "Who are you people? What do you want with him?" Olivia snarled. She had enough of people threatening her and Ghost for one day. She was about to cast a spell as Michael sensed the arch energy around him fluctuating. But he quickly squeezed her hand. "We have seen enough deaths," Michael whispered. Then he looked back at the man while the merchant ship crew stared at Michael, wordlessly begging him to go with them and save their lives. "You got me," Michael threw his arms in the sky. "Teacher." Olivia growled as she grabbed his hands. Michael turned out with a gentle smile on his face. "I survived worse. Just quit whining and reach home safe." Michael squeezed her arm as a gesture of reassuring her before stepping toward the pirates. When Michael reached his side, the man's gaze swept across the ship. "If you wish to see him alive, don't tell anyone about this." He directed his gaze at Olivia. "Trust me when I say this, people. If you breathe a word about this, we will kill you and your kin." According to Michael's plan, the pirates had no idea Ghost is the Dark Lord. As far as they were concerned, the Dark Lord ordered Corey to capture him, and Corey conveyed the order to them. Even Corey thought Ghost was one of the Dark Lord's targets. "Listen to them. Do not speak a word of it." Olivia didn't nod but stared at him with a blank mind. She only snapped back to reality when the man grabbed Ghost by his collar and leaped back to the man of war. By that time, their figures had disappeared from their sight. After Ghost left the deck, the crew members sighed in relief. Except for Olivia, everyone seemed rather happy. Back on the man of war's upper deck, Michael was surrounded by several pirates with scimitars. They all stared at him menacingly as the captain showed him towards the opened latch on the ship's center. "Chill out, bro. I am walking." Michael sped up his pace. Soon, the ship began to move, but he couldn't watch over the merchant ship or Olivia as he was pushed down the ladder leading to the dark lower decks of the ship. The strong stench of rum and moth made him twitch his nose. The pirate captain walked behind him, leading him further into the dimly lit corridors until they reached a tiny room with no windows. Instead, the room had a tiny bed, a hand-size hole on the wall to enable wind flow, and a weakly burning candle. The room was barely 4 feet wide, and if Michael bounced, he would hit his head on the ceiling. But, on the other hand, the bed sheets looked ancient, yellowish, and drenched in fluids that Michael didn't even want to guess what. "Enjoy your stay, Lord." The man chuckled evilly before shoving Michael into the room and closing the door behind him. Michael waited until the footsteps completely went quiet before establishing a connection with Corey. "Is it done?" Michael thickened his voice and asked Corey. "Yes, my lord. My men have captured Ghost without any casualties, as you ordered." "What's your next order?" my lord? Where are you right now? Instead of giving Corey her next orders, Michael asked about her whereabouts. Still following the target, my lord, Corey said. As per Michael's orders, Corey delayed the ship Sabrina and the vampires on for a week by destroying the mask with chain shots. Corey and her men plundered the ship, intending to delay their journey. Afterward, Michael asked Corey to leave them alone. It took the vampires another week to repair their ship before resuming their journey. Corey had been following the vampires for 4 days by now. They are sailing away from the southern continent, my lord. Where is Ghost now? Michael asked, pretending not to know anything about Ghost's location. In the Crystal Ocean, my lord. How long do you think it takes for your men to reach your target? Corey's voice trailed off as Michael heard the sound of papers ruffling. A few seconds later, she responded, a day if the wind's with them and day and a half if it isn't. Michael rubbed his chin for a moment. Hey Race, what you're gonna do? Order your men to sail to your location, and then follow the target together. When the target anchors somewhere, throw Ghost over to the target. My lord, what if they reach their destination before my men could reach me? Then note the location and inform me right away. Remember, no matter what, do not lose them, Michael coldly said to Corey. Understood, my lord, and tell your men to stay away from Ghost. As you wish, my lord. Michael was glad to hear Corey abiding by his orders without asking a question. After dealing with Sabrina and the key, Michael decided to deal with the 2 pirate lords. Currently, Pirate Lord Vance rejected Michael's offer to join his army, which was a pretty stupid move if one asked Michael. The most powerful pirate, Lord Blackmane, was yet to be found by Corey, and after which, Michael would give him the same offer he gave Vance. Michael would be forced to destroy them if they rejected his generous offer. He had so many things to do, and playing tug-of-war with weaklings such as Vance was not something he would spend more time on. It seems like I have some time to kill. After closing the connection with Corey, Michael turned his focus to the dirty bed beside him. He accessed his system storage to take out a thick blanket and put it on the bed. Only then did he lunge onto the bed. After a long few days of planning and killing, Michael decided to get some sleep. However, he doubted he would get any sleep or rest after reaching where the vampires were traveling to. Chapter 528, Caged Sabrina. It's kinda relaxing. Michael snuggled under the warm blanket, talking to Gaia through the earpiece. He felt like a teenager who talks to his girlfriend hiding under the blanket. What's relaxing? Asked Gaia. Everything's Snake. The storm outside, this cozy room, the warm blanket, everything. Enjoy while it lasts. Who knows what would happen after you get to Sabrina? Michael heaved a long breath of sigh, staring at the moth-covered ceiling. By the way, why aren't you going as the Dark Lord? Gaia asked. I could, but if I did, Sabrina wouldn't open up to the Dark Lord. We need to know more information about the key. If the vampires are keeping her alive, it means they can't get to the key without her. Since I saved her and her mother, she has a soft spot for Ghost. I can use that to get to know more about the key. Do you have everything you need? You said you broke your swords fighting the elder vampire. I already told Corey to order her men to give me a pair of swords. I can make do with that until we go to the aqua auction. Don't be stupid. They'll put 2 swords in the space ring. Take them with you. Gaia raised her voice, yelling at him like a concerned mother. Oh? Michael quickly sent a sliver of arch energy to the silver ring on his middle finger as the ring began to glow dimly. Then a pair of swords materialized above him and floated in the air. Each of the 2 identical swords had a long, thick, warped blade made of iron held by a grip wrapped in shiny, red-scaled leather. With a single, sharp edge, the sword would protect him from incoming blows while also giving him the ability to shred his enemies to pieces. The blade had a jagged, twisted crossguard, offering plenty of protection to his hands and thus his life. Although the crossguard had a decorative crow head on each side, the cost of forging the swords must have been high. A massive pommel was decorated with gilded linings. No expense was spared for the gorgeous swords in front of him. The blade itself was engraved as countless symbols have been delicately etched into the blade, which only added to the elegance of this weapon and its cost. Where did you get them? Michael was surprised by the swords. Although he liked the black swords more because he liked black, The 2 silver swords weren't inferior to his previous 2 swords by any means. Where else? From Maze-Roth Armory. Do you know they have an entire hall filled with old used weapons the students could use for free? Those fuckers are really rich and resourceful. He couldn't believe they threw these 2 beautiful swords into the waste room and let the students take them for free. If these 2 swords were to be used for free, imagine the things in their protected vault. It would be nice to rob them blind one day, Michael exhaled. To others, earning 20 to 25 million a month was a huge deal. Not even many nobles would earn that much. However, compared to Maze-Roth, the noble families in R, and some cultivators such as Hendrix, he was poor as a sewer rat. Nonetheless, it would soon change when the scarcity of alchemists hit the 2 continents like a raging tsunami. The vampires did him a huge favor by killing 80% of the alchemists in Elon and Azair. Besides, he ended Gabriel's life. Thus, his value just skyrocketed through the roof. The exclusive clients of Gabriel would have to look for another alchemist, and Michael would be their only choice. He already decided to raise the prices since it was the logical thing to do. We are still way weaker than our enemies. Just get to the soul refining stage quicker, Snake. Not all of them can get stronger by killing people, my dear Michael, she hissed. What if we both travel to the treacherous ocean one more time? The last time I went there with Layla, I was so weak. If we both reached the soul refining stage and went there, we could dominate the place. Many young masters such as Noah wouldn't revisit a place that they went to while they were weak. They would struggle and depend on their luck to survive the place. But after surviving, they wouldn't return to the place. However, Michael planned to visit the treacherous ocean. Now he had more tools and was stronger than he was when he last visited. He was confident that he could dominate the treacherous ocean and harvest all the resources there to get stronger. Why not? I'll be like a post-engagement honeymoon, Gaia chuckled. Oh shit, I have to go meet Gilrine. Suddenly Gaia remembered she had to accompany Gilrine to the Black Forest. Alright, be safe. I'll get some sleep and I'll update you after I reach the destination. Don't die on me, okay? Just get home safe with the key human. Amua, I love you. Gaia kissed him. I love you too, Gaia, Michael softly said before cutting the connection between them. After everything was said and done, Michael closed his eyes, trying to get some sleep. While Michael was sleeping peacefully, Sabrina curled into a ball on the floor, trying to fight the cold. Unfortunately, she was stammering in the cold and tried to cover her hands and legs with her long silver robes. The vampires kept her in a cage below decks. As far as she could see, there was nothing but pitch blackness. The water leaked through the holes and gaps above her and drenched her dress. Rowena, Noah, where are you? Sabrina sobbed. She may be strong, but she was still young and innocent. So when Peyton recruited her to chase down Victor, she thought it would give her real-world experience. Sabina didn't believe she could become a fearless warrior by studying books and fighting dummies in Holy Trident Academy. Instead, she wanted to fight real enemies and get a real battle experience like her brother Noah. However, everything changed when a monster of a man attacked their safe house in the southern continent. Even in her current condition, where they caged her like an animal and fed her only once every 2 days, she thought about Peyton. She slowly opened her palm as a dim golden light brightened her face. Her puffy eyes, due to sobbing so much and paleness, became visible in the light. Until recently, Sabrina was oblivious to the golden rune on her right palm. However, the rune began to glow when she came across an ancient parchment in a dungeon that appeared in Kingdom Mohan. The parchment contained words written in an ancient language. Unfortunately, she couldn't make out any words except the name Aurora, which was written in their language. Sabrina wanted to take the parchment to her elders in Holy Trident, but the parchment turned into a flash of light and entered her brain. Ever since then, Sabrina could recall the way to something called the key. She only shared the information with her teacher at Holy Trident Academy. Little did she know that her teacher was an elder vampire disguised as a teacher in Holy Trident. Because of him, Sabrina was captured by the vampires and forced to show them the way to the key. Otherwise, they threatened Sabrina by telling her they would massacre her family overnight. Now she had no choice but to guide them through the maze to get to the key. Even if it cost her her life, She wouldn't let anything happen to her family. But deep down, she wished either Rowena or Noah would come and save her from the monsters above her. "I want my big brother." She sobbed like a little girl in fear and despair. She shuddered when she heard the door creak open as she saw the light peeking through the door to her cage. "Get a bitch. The island is nearby." A figure dressed in black robes rattled the cage with the wooden stick he used to beat Sabrina for fun. Even in the pitch-black darkness, she could see his ruby-red eyes menacingly looking at her. He licked his lips as Sabrina shuddered. She had seen him bite a youngster's neck and drink all his blood until the youngster was mummified. She could still feel the pain in her back due to the beating he had given her a few days ago. Up, she stuttered as she tried to pick herself up. But the shackles around her wrist made standing up a difficult task. Meanwhile, the vampire took the keychain hanging on his waist and unlocked Sabrina's cage. As soon as he opened the cage door, he kicked Sabrina in the gut with enough force to make her throw up blood. Ah, the smell of blood. The vampire licked his lips again. Cough, cough. Sabrina kept coughing up blood. Her vision went blue because of the pain in her stomach. The next moment, he grabbed her hair and dragged her out of the cage. Thud. The vampire leaped through the opening and threw Sabrina onto the wooden rails when they reached under the open latch. Sabrina's eyes hurt as she saw the daylight after a long time. As her vision cleared, she noticed several black-robed figures surrounding her. Remove her shackles. If she tried to escape, cut her arms, she jerked her head right to see a tall, lean and mean-looking man walking towards her. Contrary to the rest, he didn't cover his head with a dark cloak. So she could clearly see his pale oval face, crimson-red eyes, and the two fangs that protruded when he grinned like a devil. Hearing the man's question, the one who dragged Sabrina to the upper deck stepped toward her. "Please try to escape." He slowly ran his wooden stick across Sabrina's face. Under the vampire's gazes, he grabbed the iron shackles around her wrist. When he touched the shackles, they just vanished into thin air. "Elijah, look there." Suddenly, the vampire stopped feeling her face with his wooden stick when they heard the vampire in the crow nest. Sabrina saw the vampires looking behind her. Because of the beating she received, she was terrified even to move an inch. Still, she looked over her shoulder through the gap between the wooden rails to see a large man-of-war ship sailing in their direction. Instead of anchoring the ship and jumping onto the tiny sandy island in front of them, they just stared at the man-of-war. Chapter 529. Big Brother Michael to the rescue. Get to the island. The tall greater vampire ordered his minions as they quickly leaped from the ship to the island with a swift jump. "Come here, bitch!" Sabrina shouted as the vampire with the wooden stick grabbed her messy golden hair. In a few moments, all the 30 vampires landed on the tiny empty island floating in the sea. Except for the vampires and Sabrina, there was only a coconut tree in the center. Other than that, not even crabs inhabited the island. "Is this the place?" The tall vampire put on his cloak as the clouds moved away, no longer obstructing the sunlight. "If they tried anything funny, board them and kill them," the tall greater vampire named Elijah said, looking at the approaching man-of-war. He then slowly moved his gaze to Sabrina, who was still under the hold of Zeke. "Get her to work," Elijah ordered Zeke, who slowly licked Sabrina's neck with a devilish grin. Elijah felt proud of Zeke because just in a few weeks, he broke Sabrina's warrior spirit. Not only that, but he also controlled his bloodlust. Zeke was the most violent and bloodthirsty vampire among everyone on the island. Elijah had lost count of how many humans and beastmen Zeke bought from the slave market just to torture and drink their blood. Sabrina squirmed, trying to escape Zeke's hold only to get slapped by Zeke. A bright light flashed across her eyes as everything became blurry because of the slap. The vampires meticulously tortured her for the last few weeks to break her warrior spirit. Of course, they couldn't destroy it completely, but they certainly broke it. Thus, Sabrina obeyed their orders like a doll without showing any kind of resistance. Zeke grabbed her neck without giving her time to steady herself. "Where to?" Sabrina pointed at the lone coconut tree in the center. While getting pushed towards the tree, she prayed deep down someone from the approaching man-of-war would save her from the vampires. But after looking at the 30 vampires around her, she just sighed inside. She had witnessed how they cast spells and used arch energy inside the void line. The ability to use arch energy made the vampires absolute gods in the southern continent. So Sabrina knew even if the entire crew of Man of War chose to attack them, the vampires would feast on them in a couple of minutes. At that moment, Sabrina would give anything to see her big brother or big sister. So while the Man of War was slowly sailing towards them, Sabrina went to the coconut tree. As she got closer to the tree, the brighter the rune glowed on her palm. Surprisingly, when she approached the coconut tree, the island trembled slightly. Then, a rune resembling the letter D slowly appeared on the tree. It glowed in golden color and pulsated powerful energy. The energy was nothing like they had ever felt. Each time it pulsated, a shock wave swept across the island. After every pulse of energy, they heard a whistling sound resonating on the island. Meanwhile, the Man of War reached close enough to cast its shadow on the island. The vampires were poised to leap onto the Man of War, but instead, they saw a hook being fired onto the island from one of the upper deck cannons. Elijah moved to the front expecting a battle. He waited for the humans to attack them, licking his lips. Contrary to his expectations, he saw a dark-robed human sliding through the rope towards them. For a moment, Elijah mistook the human for a vampire. Just like them, he dressed in full black, his long black coat fluttering in the wind. He had a beard that was neither too busy nor too stubble, and the most eye-catching feature about him was the two swords crisscrossed on his back, forming an X behind his back. As he was sliding towards them, he looked over his shoulder and showed his middle finger to the Man of War. As a result of his offensive gesture, someone from the upper deck cut the rope. They all expected the young man to fall into the water, but instead, they saw him leap into the air, roll, and land comfortably on the sandy shore like a cat. He cracked his neck, dusted the sand on his black robes, and looked at the vampires lining in front of him. When his gaze swept across them, Elijah saw a tinge of surprise in his eyes, especially when he saw Sabrina, Ghost. Sabrina shouted in joy when she saw a familiar face. Without her control, her legs dashed at him only to get pulled back by Zeke by her hair. The moment Michael saw Zeke slap Sabrina, something primal awoke in him. Something deep down told Michael to cut Zeke into pieces and throw him into the sea. Kill him. While Zeke was dragging Sabrina to the tree by pulling her hair, Elijah ordered the others to kill Michael. Michael, on the other hand, couldn't take his eyes off Sabrina. His hatred for the Guardian Guild reached another level. They knew Sabrina was with the vampires, yet they didn't even raise a finger. For them, the key was more important than Sabrina's life. Just by looking at her bruises and the messy state of Sabrina, Michael could guess what she went through. Even in front of him, the vampire handled her like she was a rag doll. "Don't you idiots know who she is?" Michael asked Elijah instead of surrendering to his bloodlust. "I said kill him." Without answering Michael, Elijah growled at the vampires, revealing his fangs and crimson red eyes to Michael. "Vampires." Michael pretended to be surprised. "Now you're gonna quench our thirst." Elijah menacingly threatened Michael. "I don't know why you bloodsuckers kidnapped me here, but I'm really not in the mood for your games." Elijah was surprised, and it was visible in his eyes. He quickly raised his arm, wordlessly ordering the vampires to halt their steps. "We didn't bring you here," Elijah coldly said. "I think you guys have communication problems. The vampires in that ship said you wanted me here." Elijah frowned, looking at the Man of War sailing away from them. Ghost didn't look like he was lying. Of course, the vampires couldn't see through his lies because he was trained to lie convincingly. "Don't kill him. Just break his bones," Elijah ordered them with a nonchalant wave. "Diddle diddle." As the vampires walked toward him, licking their lips, Michael cracked his neck. His words sounded funny to some but murderous to many. Meanwhile, Zeke stopped dragging Sabrina through the sand to watch what would happen to Ghost. Sabrina's heart started to pound against her chest, looking at the two vampires getting close to Ghost. "We are so little, Pulch, Pulch." The two vampires who extended their hands towards Michael suddenly put their hands down. Elijah saw the two just standing before him without moving an inch. When the vampires looked at Ghost, he had bloody silver swords in each hand. It happened so fast that many didn't even see him unsheath his swords. Sabrina's eyes went wide as the two heads hit the sand while the headless bodies staggered around, spraying blood through the neck. As a result, the vampires shuddered. Blood thorns. Blood bolt. Sabrina saw the vampires near her raise their hands and cast spells. However, nothing happened. The vampires looked just as confused as Sabrina and Zeke. Seeing the dumbfounded look on their faces, Michael snickered. The moment Michael saw the island, he paid the system to scan the island for anomalies. Although the system said its level was too low to provide him the full information about the island, it notified him about the strange energy surrounding it. The energy waves radiated by the island nullified any arch-energy or celestial energy in the atmosphere around the island. So even Michael had to pay 50,000 badass points to use arch-energy inside the island. Thus, he knew the vampires wouldn't be able to use arch-energy while they were on the island. Because they had no way of using arch-energy, the vampires lost all their chances of winning against him. "You shouldn't have brought me here." Michael flicked his swords, scattering the blood on the blade to the sword. After the two vampires failed to cast the spell, Elijah tried to circulate the arch-energy in his body but to no avail. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't feel any arch-energy in his body. To be exact, he couldn't feel the arch-energy or manipulate it. "I am so sick of you bloodsuckers." Michael swung his sword at the three vampires in front of him. Two of them evaded the swing by crouching down, but the one who had slow reflexes lost his head to Michael's sword. But the two who crouched down weren't lucky either. Michael kicked the sand into their eyes. When they instinctively covered their eyes, Michael cut their heads like pruning weeds. Their heads flew into the air as Michael kicked their heads with a swift, stylish spinning hook kick. The vampires were stunned by his speed and skill. In a few seconds, he killed 4 vampires. Shockingly, the vampires were highly trained by Lenora, one of the elder vampires who had a seat on the council. "I'll rip you to pieces." Instead of ordering his minions to kill Ghost, Elijah dashed at Michael to kill him by himself. Whoosh! Ghost threw his sword at Elijah, but Elijah caught the sword easily. However, before Elijah could make a snarky comment, he saw Ghost flick his wrist as a vial dropped into his arm from his sleeves. Clang! Elijah was too late to stop Ghost as he threw the vial at the dead bodies on the ground with enough force to break the vial into pieces. As soon as the vial was broken, Elijah noticed a green mist emerge from the ground. "Arg! Shit, it burns! Arg!" Soon the vampires began to scream and shout, including Zeke, who dropped to the ground, screaming in agony. Surprisingly, Sabrina felt nothing. She even saw Elijah scratching his eyes and growling on the ground. Instead of killing the vampires near him, Sabrina saw Ghost walking towards Zeke. Noah might be his archenemy, but Sabrina was nothing but nice to him. She always treated him warm and friendly, even after Michael beat the crap out of Andrews. By slapping Sabrina in front of him, Zeke punched his ticket to hell. Chapter 5:30 The Berserker Pill. While Zeke was growling and moaning in misery, Michael gently lifted Sabrina from the ground. Here, Michael put his hands into his inner coat pocket and took out a sparkling blue healing potion. Instead of taking the healing potion, Sabrina hugged him so tight and plunged her head into his chest. Michael was surprised, but he didn't push her away. Instead, she began to cry her eyes out to the point Michael felt his shirt becoming wet with her tears. "It's all right, Sabrina. It's okay." Michael couldn't help brushing her head gently. "Why are you here with the vampires?" Michael asked, pretending to know nothing about Sabrina's status. She didn't answer him immediately as she hugged him tight and cried. He could really feel the tightness of her hug. It felt as if she was trying to squeeze him to death. Only after several minutes later did she let him go. Then, Michael grabbed her hand and placed the healing potion in her hand. "Drink it. You will feel better." She nodded obediently before drinking the healing potion. Meanwhile, Michael looked down to see Zeke growling and rolling on the sand. The gentle smile on Michael's face immediately vanished into thin air. Instead, a cold, murderous look emerged on his face. The tables were turned against Zeke in a blink of an eye. Michael grabbed him by his collar, pulling him up. "You get off by slapping girls?" Michael smashed Zeke against the coconut tree. Several coconuts fell from the tree because of the force. Plop. The sound emanated from Michael's hand clashing with Zeke's face echoed through the salty air. Plop. Michael slapped Zeke again and this time, with more force behind his slap. "Ich." Zeke screamed. "Kill him," Sabrina coldly said, picking up Zeke's wooden stick that looked like a mini baseball bat from the ground. Michael turned his head to see Sabrina extending the wooden stick to him. Since she consumed the healing potion, the rosiness returned to her face. Plus, the bruises and puffiness had completely disappeared from her face. Bang! Michael struck the wooden stick against Zeke's shoulder, breaking his shoulder bone in an instant. Arg! Zeke's pain snapped him out of the anti-vampire potion Michael recently brewed after getting the elder vampire's blood. It was super effective against the low-level vampires. However, when inhaled, the potion would slowly eat the organs from inside for a couple of minutes. As a result, they would feel excruciating pain. Michael had no test subjects to test the potion until now. However, he kept an eye on the greater vampire, growling and moaning less than the rest. He wanted to test how long the potion's effects would last. After breaking Zeke's left shoulder, Michael released him as he collapsed to the ground. Then, Michael switched the wooden stick from the left hand to the right hand. The moment he switched the wooden stick, he hit Zeke's other shoulder, putting more force than before. Hence, Zeke's shoulder bones snapped with a sickening crushing sound. But it was music to Sabrina's ears. "How does it feel?" Michael bent down to meet Zeke's eyes. The vampire snarled, showing his teeth and fangs. Poch! The vampire spat on Michael's face. Michael just smiled, but not a gentle, calm smile. On the contrary, it was the smile of a cold-blooded killer. Wrong move. Michael stood up and put his feet on Zeke's shoulder. "Please be advised that the following events contain blood and gore. Please close your eyes if you are light-hearted." Michael mimicked the tone of commentators. "Yeah." Zeke growled as Michael pushed his feet down, crunching his broken shoulder bone. To Michael's surprise, Sabrina didn't take her eyes away from Zeke. "Kill him," Sabrina coldly exclaimed. For the last few weeks, Zeke beat and tortured her every chance he got. If vampires had reproductive organs, Sabrina had no doubt that the vampire would have taken the torture to a new level. After experiencing all the torture and beatings, Sabrina had no mercy left in her towards Zeke. She was innocent but not a saint. "Good," Michael nodded at Sabrina. Then he kicked Zeke right in the face. Grr, bang, bang, bang. Michael repeatedly kicked Zeke until Zeke's skull cracked and caved in. Michael felt the squishiness of Zeke's brain but didn't stop till he turned Zeke's head into a mashed potato. Normally Sabrina would have thrown up at the gory sight. But at that moment, she had no food in her belly. Secondly, she had seen worse things done to humans captured by the vampires when she was in the cage. Ghost. Sabrina looked over her shoulder to see the vampires slowly getting back to their feet, including the greater vampire. The excruciating pain in their bodies slowly lessened with time. Zeke? Elijah clenched his feet, looking at Zeke's headless body, which was still twitching under the neck. 24 versus 1. "The odds are against you," Michael said, cracking his neck left and right, facing the murderous gazes of the vampires. Michael stepped in front of Sabrina, shielding her with his body. "I can fight," Sabrina stuttered. The broken warrior spirit wanted her to fight so it could heal. "No, you cannot." Michael immediately shut her off. Michael noticed the difference between the Sabrina before him and the Sabrina he first met with just a single look. There was no way in hell she could face the vampires without some serious therapy. He then threw the bloody wooden stick to the ground and grabbed his sword, sticking it into the sand. "I'm going to enjoy killing you and sucking you dry," Elijah snarled. "You know what?" Michael sheathed his swords. "Since you fuckers pissed me so much, no quick death for any of you." Michael cracked his knuckles. Then, he flicked his wrist as a red pill bumped onto his left arm and directly went into his mouth. The berserker pill instantly melted in his mouth and was consumed by his body. As a result, his pupils constricted, muscles tightened, and his eyes showed a tint of redness. Since Sabrina was standing close to him, she noticed his muscles and height growth. He looked a few inches taller and broader than he was a few seconds ago. At that time, 2 vampires dashed at him from the right and 2 from the left. Contrary to Michael, the vampires took out the daggers hanging on their waists. Since they could use arch energy, none of them bothered to buy a sword or a spear but just had a dagger for cutting open anyone except their own kind. Michael stunned the vampires by dashing at the vampires approaching from the right at an inhuman speed. He grabbed the hand of the vampire, which held the dagger, bent the hand, and stabbed the vampire's chest with his own dagger. Poch, 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 poch. Michael rapidly stabbed the vampire's chest until he decided to slit his throat. Then he kicked the body towards the vampires flanking from the left, which left 1 vampire on his right. The vampire swung his dagger while another 6 surrounded him. He swiftly swayed his body, easily evading the dagger. Then in a blink of an eye, Michael threw an uppercut to the vampire's lower chin. His inhuman strength produced by consuming the berserker pill dislocated the vampire's jaw in an instant. Additionally, the vampire's few teeth and blood mixed with saliva sprayed out of his mouth. Michael grabbed the 2 teeth and slammed them against the vampire's eye socket. Then, without giving the vampire the time to regain his balance, Michael grabbed his head and snapped it like a twig. He lifted the dead vampire by his legs and waved it in a circle, knocking down all the 6 vampires who surrounded him. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 3,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 400 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 2,500 badass points. The system notification continuously rang in his mind. Sabrina couldn't take his eyes off Michael. He was the exact opposite of Noah, but for some reason she felt safe with him just as she felt with Noah. She had been praying for her siblings to come to her rescue, and instead of Noah or Rowena, Sabrina received him. She couldn't believe he was wreaking havoc among the vampires without using any spell. It had become clear to Sabrina that he spared Andrew's life and Peter's. Looking at him brutally killing the vampires, her warrior spirit slowly healed up. Human filth. At that moment, Elijah had enough as he dashed at Michael. Compared to Michael, Elijah was a foot taller than him. He tried to grab Michael by his neck, but Elijah had no idea the extent of raw strength Michael possessed. When Elijah reached out to grab Michael, he bent backward, unsheathed his sword, and swung the sword straight across Elijah's neck. The very next moment, Elijah saw everything spinning around him and a headless body staggering around Ghost. That was the last sight he saw before everything became darker. The vampires halted their steps as they shuddered in fear. Their fear was logical because he had just cleaved their leader's head in a blink of an eye. Many of them didn't even see what had just happened. One moment, Ghost and Elijah dashed towards each other, and the next moment, Elijah's head went flying away from his body. "I'm not a fucking saint to keep my word," Michael smirked. Under their terrified gazes, Michael grabbed Elijah's headless body as it rained down blood on him. His face was painted red with Elijah's blood in a few moments. When he smirked, he looked like the devil himself grinning at them. Michael took his time intimidating the vampires and killing them one by one. He massacred them because they hurt Sabrina. If he had known Sabrina was his little sister, Michael would have brought the calamity upon the entire vampire kind. Unlike Noah, Michael had no rules or killing restrictions. He couldn't wait to see Noah's reaction when the Dark Lord revealed the fact that Tanulia and the Guardians put his beloved little sister's life in danger. The berserker pill's effect slowly started to fade away as he raised his fist toward the mouth. Then the APD shot the red pill right into his mouth. Michael looked up at the sky, feeling the pleasurable sensation in his body. He raised his arms to the sky as he was praying. But he wasn't praying but letting the vampires enjoy their last moments in the world. Chapter 531 Army of the Queen. Michael's pupils shrunk when the berserker unleashed its full effect on him as he grew a few inches taller and broader. The next moment, he dashed at the vampires with such inhuman speed that Sabrina's eyes failed to follow his figure. He crisscrossed among the vampires, cleaving their heads and slashing and dashing them. Of course, some vampires managed to cut him, but Sabrina didn't see any signs of pain on his face. Instead, she was staring at him in complete shock. To her, Ghost seemed like a mix of Rowena and Noah. He had the finesse of Noah and ruthlessness of Rowena. Ghost terrified the terrifying vampires. Some of them tried to run but unfortunately had no way to go. In a few minutes, the golden sandy shore turned red with blood, and in addition to dried coconuts, the island contained severed heads of the vampires. Weaklings, Michael snickered after killing all the remaining vampires. Instead of approaching Sabrina, he went to the island edge, bent his back, and washed the blood off his face with salt water. Next, he washed his beard, hair, and neck to clean the blood. Then only did he turn around to see Sabrina's frightened face. "You don't have to be afraid of me, Sabrina," Michael said, splattering the blood from his two swords. He then slowly walked toward Sabrina, who stood closer to the lone coconut tree with the glowing rune on her palm. "Normally, I don't poke my nose into anyone's business. But the vampires brought me here, and you are with the vampires. Do you know what that means?" Sabrina shook her head slowly. "That means whatever you're here for has become my business. We can't fly away from here, and we certainly can't man that ship by ourselves." Michael looked at the merchant ship floating near the island. Of course, he could fly away from the island if he wanted. However, it would defeat his whole purpose of coming here. Still, Michael had to put up a facade like he was brought to the island by the vampires. "So, it's safe to assume you were brought here by the vampires because of that, right?" Sabrina saw Ghost's gaze falling on her glowing hand. Sabrina slowly bobbed her head up and down. He then turned his head to the side to see the glowing rune on the tree. Unfortunately, although the system scanned the rune, it failed to find what kind of energy the rune was pulsating. But as far as Michael felt, the energy was 100 times more powerful than the celestial energy. "Try placing your hand on the rune one more time. I have a feeling our only way out of here is to go through whatever this is." Sabrina hesitated for a few moments, contemplating whether she should involve Ghost in her mess or not. But after looking around the endless ocean, she had a feeling that no one would come to save them any time. Besides, Sabrina wanted to see what the vampires wanted from her. Wait, but when she was just a few inches away from touching the rune on the coconut tree, Michael grabbed her hand. "If we are going to do this, there are some rules. If you follow these, you will get home safe and sound. You got me?" Michael looked into her eyes and didn't move his gaze even an inch away. Under his cold gaze, she had no choice but to nod. Good. First, you will do what I say and when I say it. No questions." For some reason, the rune on the tree gave off a feeling similar to his runic teleportation runes. If it was like the teleportation rune, then he knew that the rune on Sabrina's hand must be the one that activates the teleportation rune. Just by looking at Sabrina's shivering legs, he could tell that she was terrified to the core by the vampires. Michael had seen the same signs in soldiers tortured in camps in some places back on Earth. So it was obvious to Michael that they tortured Sabria to break her spirit. "I can leverage her weakened state to get more information," Michael said to himself. Since her mind and body were in a vulnerable state, he planned to exploit it to get as much information as possible from Sabrina related to the key. Second, no lone wolf bullshit. You're not in the shape to fight alone. So let me do the fighting. You will stay close to me all the time, but no buts. I am giving you a golden opportunity here, Sabrina. You can watch and learn from the best. You can either accept it or throw it away. The choice is yours. Michael interjected her before she could oppose him. Sabrina stared into his calm, pitch-black eyes for a few moments. Finally, Sabrina nodded, having no choice. "Now go ahead." Michael released her hand as she finally placed her hand again on the rune. As soon as both runes came into contact, the runes created a powerful shock wave that circled out of the island, forming a strong wave in the sea against the wind. It almost knocked down Michael but blasted the dead bodies into the sea. The next moment, A bright light beam shot out of the tree, enveloping Sabrina and Michael. Sabrina quickly covered her eyes with her hand. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in a gloomy place void of any color except black and white. She looked up to see nothing but a black sky. She saw nothing but dark walls engraved with countless runes and symbols when she looked around her. Hearing a sudden rustling sound, she jerked her head to the right to see Ghost running his hand through the symbols. The hallway she was standing in was at least 15 meters wide. She slowly made her way towards Ghost, who was busy checking out the symbols and engravings on the wall. The place gave her an eerie feeling with its black and white ambience. Michael, on the other hand, was focused on the engravings and symbols on the wall to the point he didn't even notice Sabrina standing behind him. The seemingly chaotic engravings formed a drawing when looked closer. He could vaguely make out a lion with wings roaring at a woman with a giant woman with several arms. What drew his attention the most was the figure standing beside the lion. He seemed to be holding a sword and a hammer resembling the Doombringer. "Is that me?" Michael asked himself. "Ghost," he snapped back to reality when Sabrina placed her hand on his shoulder. "You have any idea about this place?" Michael asked Sabrina. He felt like he was dropped into a black and white movie. Even the gems in her dress lost their glow and looked gray. The floor was paved with rough stones which were also used in the walls. The sky was pitch black void of any stars or moons. Michael wondered where the light was coming from, but to no avail. Surprisingly, Sabrina responded to his question with a nod. "Shadow Realm. The plane between the worlds," Sabrina said, looking around. She read about the Shadow Realm while scouring through the ancient scripts in the Holy Academy library. Among all the realms, the Shadow Realm was the most mysterious, and many believed it was just a myth. However, after looking around the place, she had no doubts. What might possibly tempt the vampires in this place? Michael slowly walked along the walls as Sabrina followed him behind. "Can you remember anything the vampires said that could help us?" "Calm yourself and think." Michael urged her to spill more information about the key. Not only the vampires but also the Guardians were interested in the key, which could only mean one thing. The key would open the gateway to something much more powerful. Sabrina, however, remained silent without opening her mouth. Michael looked over his shoulder to see her opening and closing her mouth as though she was contemplating whether she should tell him or not. Instead of pushing her too hard, Michael decided to give her some time. "Check this out." Michael suddenly halted his steps and pointed at the engravings to Sabrina. She stepped closer to Michael, looking at the symbols he was pointing at. While she was looking at the random place Michael showed her, Michael took out several spiders and drones and let them fly out in all directions to get the place's layout. "Am I looking at something?" Sabrina asked after a while. No matter how close she looked, she couldn't make out anything but just random shapes and symbols. "It's a maze," Michael mumbled under his breath when the drones and spiders formed a map of the place. They were literally standing in the middle of a maze. The drones were still flying as the layout of the place confused Michael as a maze should. "I need to come up with a plan," Michael thought. But, of course, Sabrina was the best source to know more about the place. Was Sabrina. "What else do you know about this Shadow Realm? Any time difference between us and our world?" According to the scripts I read, time stays still in the Shadow Realm. Finally, Michael felt a little bit relieved. In case the time stood still, as she said, he could attend the Aqua Clan auction without missing it. Besides, he didn't have to worry about missing the rest of his studies in Mazeroth. His train of thoughts was abruptly interrupted by a whistling wind. They both felt a gust of wind passing through them. Michael immediately unsheathed his swords while scanning the surroundings. His environmental scanning map didn't reveal any hostiles near him until he vaguely saw a few silhouettes materializing out of thin air surrounding them. "System, scan them." Michael quickly ordered the system as the creatures walked out from the shadows, revealing their full form. As soon as Michael's gaze swept across them, he creased his brows. They were some kind of humanoid creatures with no skin covering their bodies. The creatures hissed at Michael. To him, they resembled the skinless anatomy dummies in science labs. Sabrina, who had less tolerance for horrifying creatures, immediately felt her stomach growling as her face turned green. Army of the Queen. Surprisingly, Michael heard the system's voice flickering as though something was disarraying the system. Army of the Queen? Michael was surprised. He expected more information from the system other than some cryptic words. Fortunately, Michael was able to feel his arch and celestial energy. Do you have any defense spells? Michael asked Sabrina in a husky voice while watching the skinless humanoid creatures cautiously. Sabrina nodded as he expected. Cast it on yourself and stay close to me. Michael shielded Sabrina with his body by moving closer to her. The fact she felt safe when she was with him surprised Sabrina deep down. She had only experienced this feeling when she was with her family. Hence, she contemplated how she could experience the same feeling with Ghost. Meanwhile, the creatures seemed to be hesitating to attack Michael. They were taking a step forward and back again and again. Trident cross. Sabrina waved her hand as a ghostly golden trident materialized over her head. Then from the trident's end, a translucent shield shot out to cover Sabrina. Michael counted 12 creatures around him. He wanted to know how powerful they were before unleashing his full power. Ignitia. Michael raised his sword as the lightning bolt traveled through the sword and went straight through the creature standing 15 meters away from him. As soon as the lightning bolt entered its head, the creature's head exploded into red mist, which startled the others. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. The system sounded fine except when it said the word queen. It felt like there was something else after the queen, but he couldn't hear the word. The static prevented Michael from hearing the word clearly. So weak, Michael mumbled after the headless creature collapsed to the ground. The other creatures angrily hissed at Michael. But since they had no skin on their body or face, there was no expression. So the only sign of anger they could make was hissing. Ring of Fire. Since they were standing in a circle around him, Michael simply cast the Ring of Fire to burn them all with a single spell. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Visits. For the best no understanding experience. Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. The creatures squirmed and growled on the ground, getting barbecued by the flame. However, since Michael avoided using the dark flames, they didn't completely turn into a pile of ashes. We should move. I have a feeling they are just scouts. Michael didn't waste any time lingering around but dragged Sabrina into the dark hallway in front of him. Just as Michael grabbed her hand, he noticed the rune on her hand glowing brighter and brighter. Wait a minute. Sabrina was confused as she let Ghost move her hand in a circle. As he was moving her hand, Michael noticed the rune was glowing brighter when he pointed her arm in one direction and dimmed while he was pointing on the opposite side. The rune, it's showing us the way, Michael said to Sabrina. This must be why the vampires wanted you with them. His words made sense to Sabrina, and they made more sense when they began to walk. After almost 15 minutes of walking in utter silence, the straight hallway branched into several paths. Point your arm towards each and every path, Michael instructed Sabrina. Currently, 7 paths were branching out in front of them. Although Michael sent his drones into each path, they were still flying and nearing the end of their range. Hence, finding the right path with the drones didn't seem plausible at the moment. From left to right, Sabrina moved her hand as the rune glowed brighter and brighter until her hand pointed at the last 2 pathways. Do it again. This time, from right to left, Michael instructed. Under his order, she did as she was told. But this time, Michael could see that the 50 pathway from left to right might be the right way as the rune glowed brighter when she pointed her hand towards it. This might be the way. Stay closer to me, Michael chose the fifth pathway and began to walk towards it. So, just out of curiosity, how did you end up with the vampires? They took you from the Holy Trident Academy? Michael asked Sabrina while walking. No, she shook her head. I was staying in Maven, a kingdom on the southern continent. Victor and Elijah, they killed the people I was staying with and took me with them, visits. For a better user experience, Michael noticed that Sabrina didn't tell him she was with the Guardians. Your family must be thinking you are in the academy. This leads to my next question. Do you think your academy is searching for you? You must be a big deal in your academy, right? Big deal. Why do you think that? For the first time in a long time, Sabrina's lips curled upwards. Isn't it obvious? Your elder sister is the Holy Maiden of Skyhall. Your brother is the youngest Guardian Captain. I heard you're the youngest disciple to enter the Holy Trident Academy. Your family is full of prodigies and talent, Sabrina. Michael really wondered what the hell Diana was smoking when she gave birth to her children. All of her kids turned out to be heaven-defying talents. It was really a wonder for such normal parents to give birth to monsters like Noah and Rowena. Sigh. Surprisingly, he heard Sabrina deeply exhale. I'm not up to their standards. Her answer surprised Michael. Look at me. I can't even hold a sword in my hand without shivering. If Rowena or Noah was in my place, they wouldn't have been kidnapped by me. Instead of responding to her family problems, Michael kept walking straight. However, she didn't stop talking. I was the one who always needed saving. Even now, if you hadn't come, I still would have been a slave to the vampires. Michael sensed a major inferiority complex from Sabrina, but he couldn't blame her completely. The bar set by Noah and Rowena was so high that many wouldn't reach that high in their entire lives. Granted, Noah had Andreas to guide him, but Michael knew even without Andreas, Noah would have been a heaven-defying talent. As far as Michael was concerned, if Noah didn't have Andreas, Noah would have reached greater heights. That old man was using Noah to finish what he couldn't. For once in my life, I wanted people to introduce me as Sabrina Winston, instead of Noah's sister or Rowena's little sister. I want to get out of their shadows and make a name for myself. Michael just made a sound, leading the way. They were slowly approaching a corner where Michael couldn't see what was around the corner with his eyes. But Michael had drones hovering directly above a group of skinless creatures. You can kill vampires but can't speak? Sabrina frowned as she expected Ghost to speak his mind. Sure. Michael quickly pushed Sabrina to the wall and placed his finger on his lips, wordlessly telling her to be quiet. Michael slowly moved along with the wall to the corner. He slightly moved his head, looking at the group of 5 skinless figures lying on the ground while one figure stood guard. The group of 5 seemed to be sleeping. The snoring was a dead giveaway. Still, Michael was surprised as he didn't expect them to function like normal human beings. Sabrina moved so close to him to the point he could feel her warm breath on his chest and smell the vague jasmine flavor from the top of her head. Considering she was his chest height, Michael grabbed her head and pushed her to the side. The latest episodes are on the website. What are they doing? Sleeping perhaps, Michael whispered to her. Then he slowly unsheathed his swords without making a sound. Surprisingly, Michael extended the hilt of one sword to her. She was confused because he said she couldn't fight before they were teleported to the Shadow Realm. Without waiting for her to grab the hilt, Michael lifted her hand and placed the sword in her hand. Michael noticed her hands shivering, just like she said. You can't get better without going through pain and suffering. Hold it tight. Michael pressed her fist, tightening her grip on the hilt. I will take care of the standing one. You sneak up on the others and cut their throats in their sleep. Michael didn't even wait for her answer as he leaped into the air and landed right behind the creature in a blink of an eye. There was no way but to walk past them. His speed and agility really startled Sabrina. He moved like a leaf in the wind, gentle and light. The skinless monster didn't even move until he stabbed it right through the head from behind. After killing the skinless creature, he placed the body on the ground, making no sound. Then he locked his gaze with her. Sabrina stared at Ghost, who waved his hand, telling her to come forward and end their lives. Real warriors look their enemies in the eyes before taking their lives. Noah's words sounded in Sabrina's mind, preventing her from moving her legs. A coward takes life from behind. A warrior protects a life behind him. She could literally hear Noah's teachings in her head. Never in her life did she take life from behind. Noah taught her to fight like a warrior, not like an assassin. But at that moment, Ghost was telling her to do exactly what Noah said don't. Typical. Michael snickered inside, looking at Sabrina hesitating. Instead of waiting for her to sneak up on them and cut their throats, Michael decided to kill them by himself. Standing around the corner, Sabrina saw Ghost disappointingly shaking his head before stabbing the sleeping creatures through their heads one by one in a few blinks of an eye. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Each time Michael killed a creature, the system awarded him with a measly amount of 10,000 experience points. So that was why Michael asked Sabrina to kill them, because that would have given her some amount of courage. After Michael killed them, she slowly walked toward him with her head down. She couldn't look him in the eyes for some reason. But unlike she expected, Michael didn't say anything. Visit. For a better user experience, come on, let's go. I'll take that. Michael took the sword from Sabrina's hand and turned around to continue his journey, showing no signs of disappointment on his face. As he was leading the way, Sabrina followed him silently. Occasionally, she opened her mouth and shut it close quickly. Since the path went straight, he did not need to focus on Sabrina's rube. So instead, he focused on the walls to make out shapes from the chaotic scribbling on the walls. After almost 15 minutes of walking in silence, the symbols and drawings on the wall began to make sense. Michael walked along the walls, looking at the engravings. This time, Michael saw a vague shape of a cobra and a man with wings fighting a woman on a giant lizard-like monster. Shit! When Michael touched the man, he felt a sudden bolt of electricity running through his finger. What the hell? Michael touched the engravings of the man again, but unlike before, he felt nothing. Michael walked along the walls with a deep frown on his face. Who is he? Michael asked himself, looking at the man with the wings in the wall. On the other hand, Sabrina saw nothing but scribblings and chaotic shapes on the wall. Nothing made sense to her. She walked behind him until he suddenly halted his steps. She wanted to ask why he stopped, but he raised his finger, wordlessly telling her to not speak. He looked closer at a portion of engravings where the man with the wings was fighting a giant 5-headed hydra. The man looked tiny compared to the hydra. But piqued Michael's curiosity was the vague shape of a human watching the fight from the shadows. The mysterious figure almost resembled his full Lucifer form. Is that me? Michael looked at the figure closely, but suddenly he felt a gust of wind brushing past him. Ding! In a blink of an eye, Michael moved his head to the side as an arrow went into the wall, cutting a few strands of his hair. Sling! Michael unsheathed his swords, pushing Sabrina against the wall so she wouldn't be attacked from behind. Ding! Visit. For a better user experience, ding. This time, Michael deflected the arrows with the 2 swords. Why don't you show yourself? Let me guess, you're too ugly, Michael sneered. Sabrina looked around, trying to find where the arrows were coming from. But after she heard Ghost's words, she saw a figure slowly appearing near the wall on the other side. The figure who appeared out of thin air looked exactly the same as the skinless monsters Ghost killed before. Except, the creature in front of them held a bow in its hand. Sabrina squealed and closed her eyes instinctively. But when she opened her eyes, an arrowhead made of iron was just a few inches away from her. If Ghost hadn't caught the arrow would have gone straight through her head. Trident cross. Snapping out of the shock, Sabrina quickly waved her hand as the ghostly golden trident materialized over her head. Whoosh! 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 The skinless archer changed its target when the translucent shield appeared around her. It rapidly fired arrow after arrow at Michael with lightning speed. The archer was indeed fast, but Michael was faster than him. Hence, he easily deflected the arrows with his swords while walking toward the archer. Ignitia! Michael pointed one sword at the creature and fired a bolt of lightning while deflecting the arrows with the other. Grr! The creature growled, leaping away from the lightning bolt just in time. Michael fired lightning bolts rapidly like he was shooting a gun. Thus, the skinless creature was forced to leap and run instead of firing arrows at Michael. It was so easy for Michael, a soul-refining stage warrior, to toy with the weak creature. Besides, the Shadow Realm boosted his power to a certain degree with its dark, gloomy ambience. After a few moments, Sabrina saw Ghost firing lightning bolts out of both swords. As a result, the creature growled and kept leaping back and forth. It felt as Ghost was toying with the creature to Sabrina. He was not a guy who would toy with his foes. "Why are you running? Don't you want to kill me?" Michael pretended to play with the creature, but in truth he was testing the creature's agility, speed, and powers. Even a weak rat would unleash new forms of attacks when pushed to the corner, so Michael wanted to see what the creature before him could do. Visit. For the best no_vil_underscore_understanding experience, Wind Blast, Michael changed his tactic by sending a powerful wave of wind toward the creature, blasting it onto the wall behind. The creature was able to avoid lightning bolts, but it couldn't escape the wind blast. The creature squirmed, trying to get back to its feet. But looking at Michael approaching it gradually, the creature closed its eyes as Michael saw a bright white light enveloping the creature. "That's it, use everything you have." Michael intentionally riled up the creature by laughing at it. Does the host wish to convert the life energy the Queen's Archer radiated to arch energy and show its relative cultivation level? "It's nice to see you are being helpful again, system," Michael mumbled under his breath sarcastically. "It would cost you 50,000 badass points. No shit, Sherlock. Just take it." Michael didn't try to be stingy, as knowing the enemies was crucial to winning any battle. Until now, he didn't meet any challenging skinless creatures, so he killed them easily. However, that didn't mean he wouldn't meet any stronger creatures. In fact, he had a feeling that they were just in the beginning stages of the maze and would meet terrifying foes on their way forward. Michael halted his steps, waiting for the system to give him the ability to see the creature's cultivation level. Sabrina was confused as she failed to understand why he stopped attacking the creature. On the other hand, she noticed the creature raising its hands to the sky as though it was praying for something. As a result, Sabrina saw a black arrow slowly materializing in its hands. Body strengthening stage? Suddenly Michael was able to sense the cultivation level of the creature. But, to be honest, he was kinda surprised at how weak it was. Its cultivation stage gradually rose from the body strengthening stage level 2 to 5 and stopped at level 6 when the black arrow finished taking its shape. Grr! The creature knocked the arrow on the string, aiming at Michael, who remained still. Lightning dash. Before the creature could release the arrow, Michael dashed at the creature. The next moment, Sabrina saw the creature's head flying into the air and landing right in his hand as its headless body staggered around the place, spewing dark blood. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Without wasting the blood, Michael quickly took out a few vials from the system storage and collected the blood. Afterward, he bent down to cut a piece of flesh from the creature's chest, which nauseated Sabrina. But Michael whistles and cut a chunk of its flesh, showing no signs of disgust on his face. Ring of Fire. After cutting the flesh and taking its head, Michael raised his hand, sending a wave of fire onto the headless body. It took the fire a few minutes to disintegrate the body into a pile of ash and bones. After killing the creature, Michael returned to the wall section where he was staring before the creature attacked him. However, he was disappointed to see the arrow sticking right through the place where he saw a figure resembling him. Visit. For a better user experience, damn it, Michael punched the wall, shocking Sabrina. "What was that?" she asked, breaking her long silence. "Nothing. Come on, let's go." Meanwhile, somewhere else in Sabar was sitting behind an oak table with moonlight pouring on him through the window behind him. He closed the thick book he was reading and took a long sip of red liquid from the glass in his hand. One would expect the liquid to be wine, but in truth, it was human blood. What else could an elder vampire like him drink on a beautiful night like this? His eyes were too tired to the point he wanted to cancel his night hunt and go to sleep. However, when he was about to stand up, he heard someone knocking on his door. "Come in," Saber calmly said as a young girl wearing a black top and a white miniskirt entered the room carrying a wooden box. "Lord Saber, someone has sent you this." Saber creased his brows as he smelled a familiar scent from within the wooden box. "Leave it here." The maid girl placed the box on the table, bowed towards him, and left the room, leaving Saber alone in his rather empty room. Saber waited until the footsteps were completely unhearable. Then, looking at the wooden box, Saber exhaled. Then, he slowly lifted up the wooden box to see the bloody severed head of Hakan staring at him. Hakan, even at that moment when a fellow elder vampire's dead eyes were coldly staring at him, Saber didn't lose his calmness. Instead, he closed Hakan's eyes and picked up the letter beside the head. It was obvious to Saber that whoever killed Hakan left the letter for him to read. So, he didn't waste any time but picked up the letter and opened it. "Dear Saber, I hope you are enjoying your evening in the Ar continent, the land of the rich. If you wish to continue your life by leeching onto wealthy nobles, you may do so. However, the moment you step outside Ar, I will end your pathetic life, just like I did to your friend Hakan. Yours truly, the one who's holding your life." Out of the blue, the windows behind him shattered as an arrow went straight through his shoulder. Saber jerked around to see no one in the sky. He dashed outside, but there was no one in the area as far as he could see and sense. "Who are you?" Floating in midair, Hakan asked himself. The latest underscores are on website. Am I being hunted? After navigating the maze for an exhaustingly long time, Michael saw Sabrina's pace slowing down. She breathed heavily while occasionally massaging her ankles. They could have flown, but Michael wanted to preserve his energy to fight if the skinless creatures ambushed them suddenly. "Let's rest here." Michael looked around before halting his steps. Sabrina heaved a sigh of relief as she was waiting for him to stop. She quickly sat on the ground as Michael took out a stack of firewood from his system storage. The Shadow Realm was void of colors but not void of coldness. So Michael placed the firewood between them and lit the firewood by sending a tiny bolt of lightning from his finger. Michael sat before the fire, placing his two swords on the ground beside him. Sabrina hadn't spoken a word to her since she failed to kill the skinless creatures. Sabrina gawked at him in the corner of her eyes to see ghosts staring at the blank black sky above them. Finally, she mustered up the courage to speak to him. "I am sorry." Hearing her words, Michael lowered his head to look at her flustered face. "Sorry? For what?" Michael asked. "For not killing them." Michael took a long deep breath. "I don't blame you, Sabrina. You have your own moral codes. There's nothing wrong with that. Just a friendly piece of advice. Don't let your moral codes kill you," Michael told her with his usual calm tone and gentle smile. "They are not mine." Her voice trailed off. "My brother taught me the virtues a warrior must have. I grew up learning these from him. How could I suddenly break them?" She explained herself. Michael just nodded without saying anything else. "I know you have something to say, Ghost. So please speak your mind." Her eyes water as Michael sighed. "You were with the vampires. Did you see them abide by the same moral codes you have?" She shook her head. "The latest underscores are on website. Welcome to the real world, Sabrina. The foes you will face have only one code: survive. I have moral codes too, but if they put me in danger, they'll break them in a blink of an eye. That's how I survived till now. Maybe you can follow your code of warrior because you have a family to protect you. Many don't have that virtue." Sabrina didn't take her gaze away from his for a moment. "You miss them?" she asked, tilting her head innocently. "Who?" asked Michael. "Your family. Why should I?" "They certainly didn't miss me." Sabrina sensed the coldness in his words. It showed Sabrina how much he hated his family deep down. "My mom always said a mother would never abandon her child willingly." You should get some sleep." Michael did not wish to continue the discussion. Hence, he just stood up from the ground and walked towards the wall behind Sabrina. He wanted to check if he could find any drawings or engravings that would give him some insight into the place. Michael almost forgot to give her a blanket and a mattress to sleep on, but Sabrina surprised him by sleeping on the floor, curling herself into a ball. Here, Michael came to her and flicked his wrist as a soft black mattress and a comfy blanket appeared beside Sabrina. Your mind and body need sleep. It's... What? You have something against sleeping on a mattress? His stern voice gave her no leeway to talk back. Hence, she just climbed onto the mattress and covered herself with his blanket. Every fiber in her body felt relieved when he lay on the mattress. It had been so long since she felt the comfort of a bed as she slept on the wooden floor in a cage. Never in her life had she appreciated the warmth of a blanket and the comfort of a mattress like she did at the moment. Thank you, she looked up at him with watering eyes. Sleep? You are safe now. Michael squatted beside her, gently brushing her head with a smile that warmed her heart and provided a much-needed comfort to her. Thinking Ghost would protect her, Sabrina closed her eyes without worry. Finally, she felt as though she was home. Poor girl. Noah and his fucking codes fucked her up, Michael pitied Sabrina. Visits. For a better user experience when he was about to stand up and return to the wall, she grabbed his hand. Please stay with me. Don't leave me. Sabrina opened her eyes while squeezing Michael's hand tight. I'm not going anywhere. Michael tried to take his hand away, but she didn't let go of his hand. Her grip was strong enough to tell him she wouldn't let him go so easily. Letting out a long sigh, Michael sat beside her. Still, she didn't release his hand. I am here. Now sleep, since Michael couldn't help but pity Sabrina because of what she had gone through. Finally, she closed her eyes once again while holding his hand tight. Having no choice but to stay with her, Michael sat beside her and took out the book Lord Information gave him. He opened the book with one hand as his other hand was being used as a pillow by Sabrina. While reading the book, Michael tried to contact Azazel, only to fail. Michael lost track of time reading the book. He was drowned in reading until Sabria snuggled closer and closer to him. Shit, Michael cussed as she climbed onto his leg and placed her head on his lap. Michael felt so uncomfortable since only Gaia had ever slept on his lap. It felt weird for a few moments, but when he saw Sabrina sleeping peacefully, he just smiled and let her sleep on his lap. He even brushed her hair with his other hand. Almost an hour passed as Michael closed the book and looked at Sabrina. He felt something weird. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something felt so odd, like he had some kind of connection with the girl. Should I take a blood sample? Michael asked himself. He even extended the needle in his APD to get some of her blood. But unfortunately, he halted his movement as he sensed several skinless creatures surrounding him. Michael saw at least 12 skinless creatures around him. Some carried bows while the rest had tridents. Sure, Michael put his finger on his lips. The skinless creatures around him were at the core formation stage level 3. These mindless creatures were nothing but an annoyance to Michael. He gently lifted Sabrina's head and placed it on the book, replacing his lap with the book. He extended his hand towards the swords a few meters away as the swords flew into his hands. She is sleeping, so keep it down, Michael whispered to the skinless creatures. Something told Michael that they understood their language. But one of the skinless creatures that held a trident tried to growl. However, its growl was cut close by Michael. In a blink of an eye, he needed its life by sending a lightning bolt through its throat. While the skinless creatures were startled by the quickness of his kill, Michael looked down at Sabrina to see her still sleeping without moving an inch. After making sure she was still sleeping, Michael looked up at the sky and raised his sword. A glint of shock emerged in their eyes. Michael saw a heat signature in the sky. Although it was invisible, he knew there was someone watching him. He had the feeling of someone watching him since he was teleported to the Shadow Realm, but only now could he see a heat signature. Visits. For a better user experience, as soon as he raised his sword, the heat signature vanished into thin air. Kill him. Surprisingly, Michael heard an echo after the heat signature disappeared. It was a demonic voice 100 times more frightening than his Lucifer voice. Queen. For the first time, Michael heard a word coming out of the creature's mouth. Sabrina squirmed after they made a sound, but Michael quickly sent a soft wave of wind, brushing her head. Queen, huh? Michael looked around the skinless creatures. He took a step forward as all the archers rained down arrows on him. Then, without even blinking an eye, Michael cast the wind blast. The spell created a powerful blast of wind around him, tossing the arrows away from him. But before Sabrina could wake up, he took out a sleeping pill and threw it near Sabrina's nose. The pill immediately turned into a vapor and entered her nostrils. As a result, she started to snore and fall into the deepest pits of sleep. Now we can start the party, Michael snickered. But instead of dashing toward them and fighting like earlier, Michael accessed his system storage to retrieve a dark potion. Meanwhile, the archers prepared to fire another volley of arrows, and the trident-carrying creatures poised to attack Michael as soon as he took another step toward them. The creatures expected Michael to fight as he did on his way here. However, Michael surprised the creatures by throwing the potion in his hand into the fire burning before him. The vial shattered with a muffled sound. Soon, a cloud of white smoke emerged from the fire, immediately mixing with the air around them. Michael felt nothing even after inhaling the smoke. However, the skinless creatures growled as they grabbed their throats. Here! They kept growling as most of them dropped the weapons in their hands to the ground. A few seconds later, they all collapsed, squirming like a fish out of water on the ground. Blood seeped out from every pore in their skinless body. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a low-level queen worshipper. The reward is 10,000 experience points and 1,000 badass points. One by one, the skinless creatures died by drowning in their own pool of blood. The nanites mixed with the potion he brewed using the creature's head and flesh produced a powerful poison. In truth, the poison's effect surpassed his expectations. The only unfortunate thing was even though the creatures were relatively at the core formation stage, he didn't receive more experience points. Shit, he is coming for me. Michael heard a panic-stricken voice out of the blue. He jerked his head away in the direction but saw no one in the area. He scanned the area and tuned his X-ray vision. But still, Michael saw no life signs around him except Sabrina, who was sleeping peacefully. Arrest him! Michael heard another voice of a woman with a British accent. He is hunting me. Michael heard the first voice he heard again. Draven. Visit. For a better user experience. Michael was so confused by the voices. No matter how much he looked around, he couldn't find the source of these voices until he noticed a small glimmer in the wall behind Sabrina. He slowly and cautiously made his way to the wall. The part of the wall he noticed a glimmer had a crack, and finally he found out that the voices coming through the crack. He leaned closer to the wall, placing his ear against the crack to listen to the voice. However, the moment he placed his ear on the wall, he felt a sudden force pulling him into the crack. What the fuck? Michael tried to pull himself free from the force, but he failed. He couldn't even move an inch. System, Michael called for the system's help, except the system did not respond to him. The next moment, everything around him became pitch black. Michael heard an otherworldly humming as he saw the light in front of him a few hundred meters away. He wondered where he was and tried to contact the system, but it didn't respond. He felt like he was soaring through the air like a rocket. The feeling was familiar to Michael. He felt the same when he was transmigrated to this world from Earth. Hence, Michael could vaguely guess he was being transmigrated somewhere else. But he wondered why and how. He didn't panic as he got closer and closer to the light at the end of the dark place. When he reached the light, everything around him changed. The black and white ambience of the shadow realm vanished as the colors returned to the world before him. Put me in the super prison. Michael heard the shouting voice again. At that moment, Michael noticed he was floating inside what seemed to be a command center that had a semi-modern and fantasy vibe. The numerous men and women sat in front of a glass that resembled modern monitors, but the people themselves wore medieval robes. The walls and floor were built with some kind of gray wood which, coupled with the blue light radiated by the mirrors, gave the place a vibe of a law enforcement command center. "Didn't you hear me? He is coming for me." Michael heard the voice, and he jerked his head in the direction to see a shocking sight. A man with 6 hands shouting at a man on the elevated platform at the hall's back. He had 2 human hands and 4 hands protruding out of his back. Compared to his human hands, the hands coming out of his back were longer and seemed rubbery. In addition to his surprising 6 arms, the man wore dark goggles covering half of his face. On the contrary to the man with 6 hands, the man he was shouting at looked normal, calm, and composed. Instead, the dark-skinned man radiated a domineering aura. Michael turned his gaze at the mirrors for a moment to see various pictures of people and images of places running on. Suddenly, the mirrors went blank as they flickered with red light. What's happening? The dark-skinned man on the platform asked in a thick accent. Soon, 5 figures dressed in various superhero costumes entered the hall through the door behind the dark-skinned man. The men and women in the hall waved their hands. They kept touching the various symbols appearing on the mirrors until the mirrors stopped flickering with red light. Visits. For a better user experience, I don't know General. Suddenly the Etherian energy readings went off the charts. A young man said as the man with 6 arms shivered, "It's him. You have to save me." When the man with 6 arms stuttered, the 5 figures who had just entered the room poised to attack the man. Among the 5, 2 youngsters didn't wear any masks. One was a dark-skinned young man with a muscular physique and tall. He wore a jade t-shirt and a pair of spiky gloves. Meanwhile, the other was a strikingly beautiful blonde girl who tied her hair into a short ponytail. She moved her mouth as though she was chewing a piece of gum inside. The remaining 3 all wore latex costumes, and all looked different and unique from one another. The man leading the group wore a suit resembling the suit of a Spider-Man, except his crimson-red suit was sleeveless. The girl behind him wore a yellow suit with black stripes resembling a Bengal tiger. Except for the ponytail striking out of her mask, the suit covered every part of her body. The last group member wore a half mask covering the face above his mouth. His suit had a mix of red and blue with a symbol of an eagle engraved onto his chest. Something told Michael that they were all young and some kind of superheroes. "System, where the fuck is happening right now?" asked Michael. He tried to touch the wall beside him, but as he expected, his hands went inside the wall. The host has been pulled into another universe from the Shadow Realm. The host is currently in an astral form. Your physical body is still in the Shadow Realm. Fuck. Another universe? How did that happen? This was one of the few scenarios in which even Michael became confused. He looked around one more time at the panic-stricken people in the hall. "System, what's the time difference between this universe and mine?" Michael calmed himself as he knew panicking wouldn't help solve anything. The host has nothing to worry about. In the Shadow Realm, not even a second has passed. So the time difference between your universe and Etheria is negligible? So this universe is called Etheria. Michael slowly floated towards the young man who talked about energy readings. Michael tried to slap the young man, but his hand went straight through the man's head, making Michael smile. "How do I get out of this place?" "Your soul cannot stay apart from your body for long. The Shadow Realm will return your soul to your body soon." Michael was relieved to hear that he could return to his universe soon. Of course, he was curious and wanted to know more about Etheria, but he had his own problems to deal with and things to finish before thinking of conquering Etheria. "Why am I here though?" The system level is too low to answer the host's question. "You know, you have been less useful recently. The latest _AP_SODIs are on _this website," says the host who doesn't upgrade the system more often. The system snickered. "What the hell is he doing here, Chandler?" the red-suited hero asked the dark-skinned man. Unlike the latex-suited youngsters, the man wore a long black coat with crimson red lining and had wavy neck-length hair. "Stand down," The man raised his hand. He's here to surrender. Surrender? The tall, muscular guy opened his eyes wide. No, I am not buying it, Chandler. He's trying to pull something? The girl chewing the bubble gum looked skeptical, as well as the muscular guy. Since Michael had nothing else to do, he wanted to see what was happening. He floated towards the group. Run a full scan of the ship. I don't want to get caught with my pants down. Instead of responding to the angry youngster, the man ordered his crew. For God's sake, put me in jail or call the Supreme Ones. Michael noticed the man with 6 arms shivering uncontrollably and sweating like a pig. Calm down, Fergus. You're safe here. Michael turned back to see a young woman in black Kevlar armor walking towards them. She almost walked through Michael. General Atkins, she placed her 3 fingers on her chest and bowed towards Chandler. We have searched through the ship. We are safe and secure, General. After hearing the lady, Fergus deeply exhaled. He looked a little bit relieved. Now will you tell us why he suddenly changed his mind? Michael saw the sleeveless hero ask, The Reaper. The entire hall went silent when Chandler said the name The Reaper. No one uttered a word, and Michael saw fear and terror in everyone's eyes except Chandler and the lady who entered the hall lastly. Fergus believes the Reaper is going to kill him next, Chandler said. Believes? Fuck you, Chandler. What do you think happened to poison Lenora? Fergus asked, looking at the 5 youngsters. According to the UFH records, she disappeared. The girl chewing a gum answered Fergus as he snickered. Disappeared my ass. She was killed. No, not killed. The Reaper slaughtered her. As soon as Fergus spoke these words, the youngsters gasped in shock. Visits. For the best no_vil__G experience, the youngsters were stunned. Michael could sense the shock in their hearts despite their masks covering their faces. What the hell is he talking about, General? The girl wearing a tiger suit asked. What happened to her was strictly need to know. I have a feeling that you have a reason to share this information with us now. Michael turned his gaze towards the young man with an eagle emblem on his chest. His voice had a rather soothing effect as he spoke so calmly. You're going to escort Fergus to Supreme One's headquarters? No. Both the sleeveless guy and Fergus shouted at the same time, disagreeing with Chandler. Why can't you take me there? Or get the Supreme Ones to take me? I'm not going to go with these amateurs. The Reaper would massacre them in minutes. The muscular young man threw him a threatening glance at Fergus, but he didn't give a damn. Bringing you ourselves to them is like flashing our location to the Reaper, Michael heard Chandler. But by looking at his eyes, Michael could tell Chandler was lying. The real reason why he was ordering the youngsters to escort Fergus was definitely something else. Michael was 100% sure. Alert! 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 Suddenly, a mechanical voice resonated in the ship as the room turned red. What's happening? The lady behind General Chandler shouted. Michael noticed the images running on the mirrors slowly transforming into a wolf's head. General Chandler, we've been hijacked by the lone wolf. The young man from before shouted at General Chandler. I knew it. I knew coming here was a mistake. I am out of here. Fergus frantically shook his head before trying to get out of the platform, but the 5 youngsters blocked his way. You're not going anywhere, the sleeveless hero exclaimed. Visits. For a better user experience, get her out of my ship. General Chandler raised his voice as the men and women in the hall began to work like bees. Then, General Chandler turned around to look at the lady. Captain Ivy, get your team ready and meet me here in 5 minutes. I have a feeling the Reaper is coming here for his life. The crew of General Chandler began to work like worker bees. Michael flew around the hall, trying to better understand how the mirrors worked. They looked like some kind of hybrid of magic and technology. Michael noticed every mirror had a glass cube with a bright light glowing within. What kind of energy source is this? Michael asked himself. He also saw wires running into and out of the glass cube to a copper box with several components and a complex web of wires inside. General Chandler. Michael stopped hovering around when he heard a loud mechanical voice echoing through the hall. Hand over Fergus to us. Michael saw the crew looking flustered, trying to free their systems from the hacker. He didn't know this world was familiar with the term hacking, but they were undoubtedly hacked by someone. Everything happening in front of him piqued his curiosity to the next level. It was kinda relaxing to sit back and watch the chaos someone else had been creating. Instead, he was excited to see what would happen next while pondering why the Shadow Realm teleported him to Etheria. "That's not going to happen," General Chandler calmly said. They all waited for the hacker to respond, but they simply didn't. Suddenly, the ship jerked as something just hit the ship from above. The ship's defense systems have been deactivated. Michael heard the mechanical voice of the ship resonate in the hall. He could feel his excitement rising within his heart. "Captain Ivy, go," General Chandler ordered Ivy as she rushed out of the hall. "Everyone," after sending Ivy away, General Chandler called out his crew, "Go to the hangar bay." The crew members immediately stood up from their seats. They left for the door on the other side in an orderly manner without raising any objection to his word. "General Chandler, what's happening here?" the tall, muscular guy asked, bewildered. "Visits. For the best no_underscore_underscore experience, you idiot. Don't you get it? Just here." Fergus snapped, "Let me go." Fergus had no courage to stay with the UFH's recruits anymore. When he decided to surrender, he thought UFH would send him to the super prison or the Supreme Ones. However, he never expected General Chandler would ask a bunch of amateurs to guard him. Fergus had better chances to survive alone than with the newbies. Thus, he made up his mind to get the hell out of the place before the Reaper could reach him. Michael flew back to the elevated platform where he saw Captain Ivy returning to General along with a group of white-armored soldiers carrying crossbows and spears. "Harry," General Chandler turned his gaze to the youngster wearing sleeveless latex armor. "Escort Fergus to Bay 15. Captain Ivy dash." Boom. The ship shook again, and they all heard a loud explosion coming from somewhere in the ship. "Go!" General Chandler raised his voice as the group quickly turned around to leave the command center. However, they didn't even take a few steps toward the door when the door closed automatically. "We are trapped," Fergus panted. His breathing turned heavier and heavier as he looked pale. Michael noticed Fergus kneading his hands nervously. The soldiers behind Captain Ivy climbed down the stairs on each side of the platform to surround the hall. The room was lit with red light, giving an eerie feeling to Michael. Boom. Yet again, they heard another sound reverberating in the hall. Though this time, it wasn't the sound of an explosion but sounded like someone banging the ceiling above them. "Prepare for battle," General Chandler gravely said. Michael could see the dark frowns on his face. He seemed confident and calm, but his voice had a tinge of concern. The more Michael saw their reactions, the more curious he became. He wanted to see who the Reaper was and how they fought in Etheria. Bang! The ship trembled yet again, and the mirrors flickered until they turned black. The room turned gloomier and darker after the mirrors went off. The latest episodes are on _ website. Afterward, the banging sound finally stopped. The eerie silence haunted the room, making every passing second a daunting experience. "Let's see what makes this Reaper a big deal," the muscular guy cracked his knuckles. "Harry, do you think your team is ready?" General Chandler asked Harry without turning back. He still looked at the empty command center before him. "I think we are going to find out." Harry sounded a little bit nervous. "We are all dead." Fergus just collapsed to the ground. There was no fight left in him. However, Lenora was several times more powerful than him, and she was a gifted one. She not only possessed the power of charm, which puts people under her influence, but also the power to make plant life do as she wishes. She could kill anyone with a single kiss by sending the deadly toxins in her body into her prey. She was one of the most feared supervillains in all Etheria, yet Fergus saw the Reaper slaughtering her like cattle. She stood no chance against him, none at all. Bang! The ship trembled violently as a huge chunk of the wooden ceiling came down, crushing several mirrors under and creating a cloud of dust in the center of the room. Captain Ivy and her men immediately surrounded the cloud of mist as Michael vaguely saw a silhouette standing in the mist. Ivy and her men slowly approached the center when they saw the shadow of wings appearing in the wall behind the mist. The man with the wings. Michael recalled the engravings on the wall he saw. The wings and the silhouette of the figure looked precisely the same as the engraving. Now Michael wondered who the other person in the drawing was, the one who was watching the man with the wings battling a lady with hundreds of arms. The Reaper, Fergus mumbled, and when Michael looked down, he noticed a wet spot enlarging on his brown pants. Fergus had literally pissed himself just by looking at the Reaper. It was apparent to Michael that whoever the Reaper was, he put the fear of gods in his enemies' hearts. Boom! Ivy and her men were just a few meters away from the Reaper when he flapped his feathery wings. The next moment, a powerful shock wave created by the flap of his wings sent Ivy and her men crashing onto the wall behind them. Although Michael was not in his physical form to feel the shock wave, he could guess the force by looking at the trembling platform. The youngsters and General Chandler had to hold onto the rails to avoid stumbling down. Michael looked around to see Ivy and her men lying on the ground without any movements. Some even bled because of how badly they hit the wall before falling onto the ground. Dang! The girl chewing a gum stick blew out a bubble and exclaimed. The shock wave cleared the cloud of dust, revealing the Reaper to everyone in the hall. As soon as Michael's gaze swept the Reaper, he was hit with a familiar feeling. The Reaper wore a long black coat and a suit of armor that seemed like it was made of Kevlar and some metal plates underneath. Visit. For a better user experience, his raven black hair, how he dressed, and the cold murderous look in his eyes reminded Michael of himself. Besides, Michael had a feeling that he had seen him in life before. To be honest, Michael thought the Reaper would be old or at least a middle-aged man after seeing how they acted. However, the Reaper was a young man. At most, he would be 25 or 26, definitely not more than that. Give me Fergus and no one has to get hurt here. The Reaper's voice sounded like a death bell, clear, loud, and dosed in full of killing intent. Except you. The tall muscular guy leaped from the platform and landed a few meters away from the Reaper. Carl! Harry shouted, trying to stop him, but it was too late. Carl walked towards the Reaper, cracking his knuckles. Get ready to taste my knuckle sandwich, Carl snickered. When Carl got a hand-reaching distance to the Reaper, he closed his fist and threw a punch. Regardless of his size, Carl surprised Michael with his speed. However, the Reaper surprised him more by easily evading the punch with a sway of his body. Punch. The next moment, Carl caught up blood. Carl! His team shouted as they saw a black sword sticking out of Carl's back. Harry and the others were stunned beyond words. Their minds went blank as they had never seen Carl bleed until now. Carl was the team's defender whose power was super strength and impenetrable skin. His powers made Carl a feared superhero among the young generation of heroes. Carl's legs became weak and as a result he fell on the Reaper. The teammates were still shocked while the Reaper twisted the sword sticking through Carl's back. Trinium blade. The Reaper patted Carl's back and sent his sword deeper into Carl's gut. As a sword expert himself, Michael could tell that a stab would not take Carl's life but immobilize him. The Reaper could have easily bent his back and swung his sword across Carl's head. But the Reaper chose not, which showed Michael that the Reaper spared Carl's life when he could have taken his life without breaking a sweat. Finally, the teammates snapped out of their shock and leaped at the Reaper with uncontrollable anger and fury. Michael looked at each youngster closely to see what their superpower was. The one wearing a tiger suit leaped into the air with such finesse and ease, showing her acrobatic skills. Then, Michael noticed Harry dashing at the Reaper with superhuman speed, followed by the youngster with the eagle emblem on his chest. The young man's fist lit up as lightning bolts crackled around his wrist. The last one in the group was the young girl chewing a stick of gum. Instead of following her teammates, she remained on the platform. Michael wondered what her superpower was, and his question was soon answered when a golden bow materialized in her hands. You had sent them to their death, Fergus mumbled with all of his 6 hands on his head. He seemed to have already accepted his death because he didn't even try to escape. The latest underscores are on website. Meanwhile, the wings just disappeared from sight as the Reaper drew his sword out of Carl. Carl collapsed to the ground, holding his gut to stop the bleeding. Cheetah, take him away. Harry shouted at the tiger-suited girl. She was diving toward the Reaper, but when she heard Harry's order, she changed her trajectory and landed beside Carl. The girl beside Chandler sent a golden arrow made of sparkling energy to the Reaper to prevent him from attacking. However, the Reaper simply raised his hand, catching the arrow in midair without breaking a sweat. At that time, the youngster with the eagle emblem shot into the air, leaving a trace of blue light behind him. Michael felt like watching a superhero movie. While the cheetah was dragging Carl away from the Reaper, Harry dashed at the Reaper as the man flying in the air extended his hands towards the Reaper, firing beams of blue energy. The Reaper swung his sword with one hand, blocking Harry's punches while raising his other hand as a black shield retracted out of the metal bracelet in his arm. The black shield reflected the light beams back at the man above. The youngster didn't expect the shield to return his energy beams to him. He tried to evade but was a few seconds late as the light beam blasted him onto the ceiling above him. "Neon!" Harry shouted, seeing Neon hitting the ceiling, sling. Harry was still in shock when the Reaper swung his fist, sending the shield flying towards the girl, firing arrows from the elevated platform. Boom! Michael saw the black shield crashing onto the girl and sending her flying back. The bow and arrow in her arms vanished into thin air, and surprisingly, the shield bounced onto the wall behind the girl and flew back to the Reaper. While looking at the battle, Michael understood one thing. The superhero team wasn't amateurs, but the Reaper had superior battle experience than them. He was calculating everyone's move even before they could make it. Despite the youngsters showing good teamwork and coordination, the Reaper had the upper hand because of battle awareness. As the shield returned to his hand, the Reaper turned his full focus to Harry, who fought without any weapons. Michael saw the shield retracting into the bracelet rather than disappearing as Michael initially expected. The device on the Reaper's arm gave him the idea to build something like that so he could defend himself in a physical fight. Until now, Michael depended on his superior close combat skills and sword master to defend himself in a battle with no spells involved. Although Michael felt no need for a shield as it would cramp his fighting style, he decided to build a device like the one the Reaper has. Neon and the archer girl were picking themselves from the ground as Harry fought the Reaper single-handedly. Michael couldn't take his eyes off the Reaper and Harry. It was like watching a kung fu movie where two masters fought to the death. Visits. For a better user experience compared to the rest, Harry seemed to have more battle experience. He almost reacted as fast as the Reaper and blocked his punches and kicks. "I can do this all day," Harry said, blocking the Reaper's punches. "I don't have all day," the Reaper snickered. The very next moment, the Reaper vanished into thin air, shocking everyone except Chandler. However, Michael noticed Chandler's face showed no signs of shock. If Michael was right, Chandler knew about the Reaper's powers, unlike the rest. Harry was stunned when the Reaper vanished into thin air. He jerked his head around to locate him but failed to do so. Then, suddenly he appeared behind Harry. Although Harry possessed the power to sense dangers, his reflex failed him because the Reaper was too fast. He sweep-kicked Harry to make him lose balance, and then, the Reaper roundhouse kicked Harry in the head with enough force to create a small shock wave around them. "Harry!" Neon, the archer girl, and the cheetah all shouted as they dashed at the Reaper. The Reaper stomped on Harry's chest as he coughed up blood through his mask. The archer girl and Neon repeatedly fired arrows and energy beams at the Reaper. At the same time, the cheetah dashed at him with her claws growing several inches from her fingers. "Ay-ah!" The cheetah swung her steel-like claws at the Reaper, only to be blocked by the shield on the Reaper's hand. Her claw produced sparks when they clashed with the shield. Unfortunately for the cheetah, she was not on the same level, or her claws were sharp enough to cut his armor. Hence, he simply let her scratch his chest, and when she did, he easily grabbed her hands. At that exact moment, the archer girl fired an arrow. Little did she know that the Reaper would use the cheetah as his shield. The arrow pierced the cheetah's back. "Cheetah!" the girl shouted and panicked at what she had done. Meanwhile, the Reaper showed his ruthless side of him by pushing the arrow sticking out of the cheetah's back further into her. He did not stop with that. Instead, he unsheathed his black sword from his behind lightning quick and stabbed the cheetah in the gut. Just like before, Michael noticed he didn't go for the kill but stabbed her just to immobilize her. Neon didn't fire energy beams because Cheetah stood so close to the Reaper. After Michael pushed aside the Cheetah, Neon flew towards her instead of attacking the Reaper. Visit. For a better user experience, he flew towards the Cheetah as fast as possible and tried to fly away from the Reaper with the Cheetah in his arms. The Reaper, however, had a different idea. The Reaper grabbed Neon by his legs when Neon flew closer to him and pulled Neon towards him. The Reaper was too strong as Neon couldn't fly away. As his feet touched the ground, the Reaper grabbed Neon by his neck and punched him in the face. "Hey!" Harry growled, but the Reaper knocked him out once again with a stomp on Harry's head. Bang! 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 The Reaper repeatedly punched Neon in the face as Michael saw blood splashing out of Neon's mouth along with a few teeth. Seeing her teammates getting slaughtered, the archer girl lost her calm composure. She leaped from the platform. In mid-air, she fired arrows after arrows and didn't stop raining down arrows even after her feet touched the ground. She was really talented with the bow. Otherwise, she would have hit Neon instead of the Reaper. Her arrows hit the Reaper without missing. But none of the arrows could penetrate his armor. She moved closer and closer to the Reaper to the point she swung her fist in uncontrollable anger. However, the anger blinded her and lowered her intelligence. She was an archer, not a close combat fighter like Harry or the Cheetah. Even they couldn't beat the Reaper, let alone an archer and a delicate girl like her. When she tried to beat him with the energy bow, the Reaper released Neon's neck as he collapsed to the ground. "You should have gone for the head," the Reaper coldly said before grabbing both her arms. Bang! The Reaper headbutted the archer with enough force to knock her out instantly. Then, when all the five were on the ground, either knocked out cold or bleeding, the Reaper finally turned his gaze at Chandler. Michael followed the Reaper behind as he suddenly vanished into thin air. A second later, he appeared behind Chandler. "No, no, 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 no." Fergus began to stutter in fear. Chandler slowly turned around to see the Reaper staring at him. "Draven." Chandler called the Reaper by his name. Unlike Fergus, who shivered and looked pale, Chandler remained calm and composed. "You are walking a dangerous path, Draven," Chandler said in a grave tone, but Draven didn't reply. The latest __sodies are on _th website. "You are doing more harm to Etheria than good, Draven. You can't clean this world by killing everyone you think needs to be killed." "A whole lot of good you're doing, Chandler," Draven snickered. "I am talking to the Draven I know, the Angel of Lotus. Not to the Reaper. You had become, ha." Surprisingly, Michael saw Draven burst into laughter. High scold laughter echoed through the eerie hall until he stopped laughing. "The Angel of Lotus is long dead. They slaughtered my family, in front of my eyes, and when I need the UFH most, you took away my powers." Draven grabbed Chandler by his neck and lifted him off his feet. "Your people catch villains at the cost of innocent lives and they call them heroes. I kill a villain to save those innocent lives and you call me evil. It's not fair. Your ways are wrong, Draven. There is no difference between what you do and what the people you kill do." Chandler struggled to speak those words. "If anyone follows me, I won't be merciful next time." Draven punched Chandler in the face without holding back his strength. As soon as his fist met Chandler's face, Chandler's nose cracked with a sickening crunching sound. Draven threw Chandler off the platform and looked down at Fergus. Don't kill me." Fergus crawled back in fear. Crack. Michael saw Draven step on Fergus' feet, applying pressure until Fergus screamed in agony. Then, Michael could hear the bones in Fergus' feet crushing under Draven's boots. "How does it feel?" Draven asked coldly as Fergus kept screaming as loud as he could. Michael saw tears gushing out of Fergus' bloodshot eyes and blood seeping out of his feet. "Do you remember her face, Fergus? Do you remember how she begged you to let her go?" Michael heard Draven stutter, and for the first time ever, Michael noticed Draven's face show a sign of despair. When Michael looked Draven in his eyes, he could see the immense grief Draven had been holding in his heart. Please, let me go." Fergus screamed in agony, but Draven showed no mercy. After crushing Fergus' feet, Draven lifted him off by his collar. Crack. Visit. For a better user experience, the moment Fergus stood up, Draven broke Fergus' right hand. Arg, you and I are gonna spend so much time quality together. After everything was said and done, Draven grabbed Fergus by his hand and closed his eyes for a second. At that time, Michael noticed a golden light around Draven. Does the host wish to follow Draven? The system asked Michael, and to be honest, Michael was slightly surprised by the system's sudden question. Instead of answering quickly, Michael looked around the place for a few moments. Why not? Michael firmly believed he was in Etheria for a reason. Something told him Draven held the answer to his question. Besides, Michael couldn't help feeling a strong connection with Draven. It was a sense of familiarity that he had never experienced before. When Draven opened his eyes, Michael saw a golden scroll in his hand. Teleportation scroll, Michael mumbled, recognizing the parchment. The system requires 5,000 points to lock onto Draven. Do it. Michael ordered the system. As soon as the system consumed his 5,000 badass points, he was pulled towards Draven. As he looked around the command center one last time, Michael sighed before his vision became blurry. You're back. Michael's vision cleared as he saw a charming brunette wearing glasses welcoming Draven. She was sitting behind a set of mirrors, tapping on them left and right. Michael looked around to get a sense of where he was. The large hall he was floating in the air looked neat, clean, and tidy. A door leading to somewhere else was located at the end of the hall. That door seemed to be the only way in and out of the hall except through the windows. He could see the mountains and lush green forests through the windows. Yet, surprisingly, they were slowly moving at a steady pace, and the buildings on the ground looked tiny. An airship. Michael was in airships before, so he immediately recognized that he was currently in an airship turned into Draven's flying fortress. Other than the tiny workstation in the center of the hall, Michael noticed the swords, bows, arrows, and various weapons hanging on the wall. How many people have you killed? The girl sighed. No one died. At least not yet. Draven looked at Fergus, who was shivering from head to toe. Draven dragged the six-armed man to the wall near where the weapons were hanging. Michael curiously followed Draven behind and saw Draven hanging Fergus on the wall by attaching shackles around each wrist and leg. Fergus was nailed to the wall in a few moments like a gecko. The bloody shackles around Fergus and the blades with dried blood on the tables told Michael the obvious. The girl looked a little flustered and uncomfortable looking at Fergus on the wall. However, it seemed to Michael that the girl knew what was about to happen. His soul is drenched in evil. Michael was taken aback by the demonic voice he heard. He jerked his head right to see a ghostly figure of an alien creature appearing over Draven's shoulder. The ghostly figure looked like Venom and Cobra had a baby. It was black, ghostly, and had white eyes with red pupils and a terrifying line of fang-like teeth. The creature licked his lips, looking at Fergus. What is this? Fergus wriggled violently against the shackles after seeing the alien creature. But no matter how hard he wriggled, he couldn't escape from the shackles that tied his wrists and legs. You will have your fill, Margoth. Draven took a bloody arrow from the table beside him. Visits. For the best no___ experience. After he tells us everything we need to know, Draven slowly ran the arrowhead along Fergus' face. Wait, suddenly the creature Draven called Margoth turned around. Michael was stunned as the creature was looking directly at him. System, what the heck is this creature, and can it see me? The system's level is too low to find the creature's origin. However, the system can reassure the host that the creature cannot see the host. Michael heaved a sigh of relief even though he was disappointed that he couldn't find the creature's origin. What? Draven asked. I sensed something familiar in the room. Something powerful. As soon as the girl heard Margoth, she stopped working and turned around. What is it? Are you sensing it right now? Draven, take out the healing potion, Margoth asked Draven. He looked a bit skeptical but did as Margoth asked him to. Then, Draven put his hand inside his long coat pocket to take out a glistening blue vial of healing potion. Is that my healing potion? Michael was stunned. There was no doubt in his mind. The healing potion in Draven's hands was the same healing potion he brewed. What surprised him more was that the healing potion was 90% pure. How can my healing potion come to another universe? Michael's mind went blank. He had no idea that Draven possessed a system of his own, the legendary system. To those who don't know, Draven is the MC of anti-hero with a legendary system. I sensed the same energy radiation coming from the healing potion just a moment ago. Are you still sensing it? Draven asked, looking around the hall. No. But I swear I sensed it, Margoth said gravely. Might be because of him. He worked on the Black Project after all. Maybe he came across something with the same energy radiation. The girl adjusted her glasses and said. Hearing her words, both Margoth and Draven pondered the possibilities in their minds. Makes sense, Margoth finally said as Michael sighed. What is this Black Project? Michael asked himself as his gaze swept across the room. Then he locked his eyes on the wall portion where he saw several drawings, posters, and paper clippings nailed to the wall. Michael floated to the wall and was surprised by the sight before him. Some of the drawings of people had red cross marks on them and the rest, including Fergus' drawing, didn't have the red cross. The paper clippings were mostly about murders, battles between a hero and a villain, feats of UFH, and collateral damages of a battle between gifted ones. Every incident and portrait were connected by a red thread. The entire portion of the wall reminded Michael of his kill board back on Earth. If he wanted to assassinate multiple targets, he would form a board exactly like the one before him. The more he spent time with Draven, the more he realized how similar they both are. Visit. For the best no_industry experience, AR. The ear-piercing scream of Fergus abruptly halted Michael's train of thoughts. He quickly turned around to see Draven slowly penetrating Fergus' palm with the arrow in his hand. The Black Project. Tell us about it, Draven coldly asked as Michael saw the girl turning her focus back to the mirrors. It was evident that she didn't like to watch Draven torture Fergus. I don't know. Draven twisted the arrow, inflicting as much pain as he could to Fergus. Listen, maggot, we are gonna kill you and no one is coming to save you. So tell us what we want to know and I'll tell him to give you a quick death. Margoth snarled while Fergus wriggled frantically in pain. You saw what I did to Lenora, right? Hold back what you know and it'll make you think what I did to Lenora was child's play. Draven left the arrow in his palm and took a rusty knife from the table. Just tell him, Fergus, the girl said without turning back. Listen to her, Fergus. He gets really creative when he wants to know something. Since you're one of the scumbags who killed his family, he will redefine torture. Margoth moved closer to Fergus. So tell us about the Black Project and seize this golden opportunity. Quick death. He won't talk until he loses something he loves. Draven snickered, fiddling with the rusty cleaver in his hand. What you're going to do? Fergus stuttered as Draven ran the rusty meat cleaver along one of his 4 rubbery arms. Poch. The girl closed her eyes tight as Michael saw Draven cut Fergus' wrist with the rusty meat cleaver. His severed wrist hit the ground with a sickening thud. Fergus frantically wriggled during his hand sprayed blood all over Draven. But the latter didn't mind the blood at all. I have 8 more pieces of you to cut. So make yourself home. Draven wiped off the blood covering his eyes and coldly said, Please, please. I'll tell you. Fergus cried. The Black Project. Arg, created. Arg, Fergus cried and shrieked in pain. Give him a painkiller, Margoth nodded. Michael once again focused on Draven's hand until he saw a milky white vial materializing in his hand. This time, however, the potion in Draven's hand wasn't brewed by Michael. Instead, it radiated a different type of energy Michael wasn't familiar with. Draven forced the white liquid down Fergus' throat. After a few seconds, Fergus stopped screaming and the blood stopped spraying out of his severed wrist. The Black Project. Spill out everything you know before I cut another one. The Black Project is all about opening portals to other universes. Michael immediately dashed at Fergus when he heard the words, opening portals to other universes. The girl couldn't stay still, so she left her workstation and came to Fergus despite all the blood and gore. I thought other universes are just a myth, The latest underscores are on the website. Where do you think we met Sarah? Margoth asked the girl. Isn't void just a pocket dimension? I thought so too. But no, the void is the place between universes. Michael heard Draven. Did I tell you to stop? Margoth growled at Fergus as he continued to spill everything he knew about the Black Project. The demon's touch device doesn't just take your powers. It sends your powers to the void. Those who built the device didn't know that until... Fergus' voice trailed off. Until? Sarah asked, looking at Fergus swallowing a mouthful of saliva nervously. Until what happened to you? Something interfered with the device that day. Whatever that was, it caused the device to open a portal to the void temporarily, so that's why the Sinisters attacked UFH and tried to steal the device. They want to open a portal to the void. After a few minutes of silence, Sarah opened her mouth. Fergus nodded. Apparently not only the Sinisters. Margoth exclaimed as Sarah creased her brows. What do you know about the Supreme Ones working on the Black Project? I don't know, I just heard some rumors. Fergus was terrified to say that he didn't know. Thus, he quickly decided to tell them about the rumor he heard when he was with the Sinisters before Draven cut his another hand. They want to find another Krypton in another universe. Michael didn't know what happened, but Draven immediately grabbed Fergus' neck. What do you mean, another Krypton in another universe? They believe there's another universe similar to Etheria where the Krypton is still alive. Michael may not possess the ability to read minds. Still, when he heard Fergus' words and saw how Draven reacted, he knew Draven's mind thought about finding his deceased family members in another universe. The host doesn't have to panic. There is no other universe similar to yours and there is no other you. Michael heaved a long breath of sigh and even smiled. But what about Etheria? The system requires 10,000 badass points to answer the host. Now you're asking for payment to answer my questions? Geesh, okay, take it. Michael waited a couple of seconds for the system to finally answer his question. Visits. For a better user experience, there is another universe similar to Etheria. This doesn't mean there is another Draven or another legendary system. Another Etheria? Michael mumbled under his breath. Deep down, Michael was glad there was no universe similar to his. He liked to be unique. However, that didn't seem to be the case for Etheria. Still, the system said similar, not exactly the same. His gut feeling told him there was no other Draven. It felt like Draven was the main character of Etheria just like he was to his universe. Another Krypton? Draven frowned. Since Michael was new to Etheria, he had no idea about the war that happened between Etheria and the Demon King's army. Krypton was the most powerful hero in the whole Etheria. Granted, Draven rivaled Krypton when he was at his peak, but unfortunately, Draven lost all his powers. Why do they need another Krypton? Sarah asked Fergus. I don't Clang. Fergus was about to say I don't know when Draven flicked the rusty cleaver. No. Fergus stuttered. Raiden. Michael noticed the dark frown on Draven's face. The trio became silent and Sarah looked terrified. What about him? Draven coldly asked Fergus. Raiden was just a low-level general of the Demon King. Demon King? That's cringe. Michael rolled his eyes. Low-level general? Sarah shrieked. She still had nightmares about the invasion and how many people had lost their lives. What do you mean, a low-level general? That guy destroyed half of Etheria and killed countless gifted ones like they were nothing. Margoth's already serious demonic voice sounded more serious. Michael wondered who the hell is this Demon King. Also, in the corner of his mind, he recalled the mysterious figure on the engraving. Until now, he thought the person was him, but after hearing about the Demon King, he had a feeling it might not be the case. I don't know if it's true, Lenora told me. I don't know where she heard it. It makes sense. Draven deeply exhaled. For a few moments, no one said anything. As a result, an eerie silence haunted the hall until Draven spoke. Visits. For the best no_vel_read_ng experience. If what he said is true, the Supreme Ones can't win against another invasion without Krypton. Invasion, another universe, Demon King. Man, this guy is in serious trouble. Michael felt pity for Draven without realizing Draven was his son. Michael didn't even try to communicate with Draven and the group. The future Dark Lord sent Draven to Etheria so he could live without being hunted by the Queen and his enemies. Unfortunately, although at that time Etheria was safe from the Queen, the citizens of Etheria managed to mess up and become vulnerable to the Queen. The only thing the Queen failed to grasp was the future Dark Lord planned everything. As a result, he never lost control of the situation. Even when Nightmare died, the future Dark Lord didn't lose control of himself because he was in control all the time. We need to capture a Supreme One Draven. We can get more information on the Black Project from them, said Margoth. They have the device and the resources to recreate what happened to me. So what's stopping them from opening a portal back to the void? Draven asked, looking at Margoth and Sarah, but to Michael, it seemed like he was questioning himself. They managed to modify the device to make it usable once a year from once every 100 years. Draven and Margoth nodded at Sarah. But Michael saw Draven thinking deeply. Indeed, Draven was thinking about something. He recalled everything Lenora said before he killed her. Before I killed her, Lenora said something about a key. As soon as Draven said these words, Michael was stunned. He immediately turned his full focus to Draven. It couldn't be just a coincidence Michael was searching for the key and Draven was also talking about a key. It wouldn't take a genius to figure out that both keys are the same. A key? Sarah tilted her head. I scoured through all UFH servers but didn't find anything about a key. Do you need anything more? Margoth turned his head towards Fergus. Please just kill me quick. At this point, Fergus lost all the will to live and was exhausted both mentally and physically. He just wanted a quick death. After seeing what Draven did to his fellow Sinisters, quick death from him would be a blessing. Did you give my sister a quick death? Ask him about the key. Michael shouted, but they didn't hear him. Where is the key? Yet again Michael shouted at Fergus while Draven pressed the rusty meat cleaver against Fergus' shoulder. The latest underscores are on website. I am going to my room for a moment. Sarah quickly took her gaze away from Fergus and stepped away from the scene. You're still such a soft girl. I told you, Draven, we have to take her outside and let her fight for a change. Damn you ugly. Sarah showed Margoth the middle finger. Fergus began to scream again as Michael saw blood drizzling down from Fergus' shoulder and onto the rusty meat cleaver. Boom. Just when Sarah was about to take another step, the entire ship trembled. Michael looked outside and saw the sky getting darker and darker as though they were flying into a storm. The day sky turned darker in a few blinks of an eye. Additionally, Michael could hear the thunderclaps and the howling sound of the wind. What the heck? Sarah staggered towards her workstation. All of a sudden, the glass windows shattered as a figure clouded in bolts of lightning landed in the hall's center. Stormbringer! Fergus screamed as the cloud of lightning slowly disappeared, revealing the Stormbringer. The Stormbringer wore sleeveless silver metal armor with archaic engravings and a dark blue cape that fluttered in the wind. Her striking blonde hair danced around her shoulder with the wind while the golden helmet covered her delicate face. Her muscular arms and the heavy sword on her back radiated a warrior vibe. Although she wasn't the prettiest woman Michael had seen, she was the toughest-looking one. Sarah's face lost all color as she looked pale. On the other hand, Fergus, who was about to greet death, became so excited. He yet again began to wriggle against the chains in joy. Do you know who I am? Stormbringer's hard as steel voice echoed through the hall. Would you believe me if I said no? Despite facing one of the strongest members of the Supremes, Draven didn't lose his calmness. It was expected of Draven. After all, Michael was his father. Release him and surrender yourself, Stormbringer said. I heard that so many times today. I assume you know what happened to those who said that. Stormbringer gritted her teeth as the sky outside turned darker and Michael saw more and more flashes of lightning followed by loud thunderclaps. Today you will answer for your crimes, Reaper. She slowly unsheathed her heavy sword. The sword was thrice the size of a normal sword. It was almost 5 feet tall and a foot wide. She could easily rush a child with that sword. She held the sword using both arms as bolts of lightning coiled around the sword. "You are dead, fucker." "Ah." Fergus began to laugh like a maniac. After seeing Stormbringer, Fergus regained his hope to live again. The Sinisters had connections within the super prisons. So it was only a matter of time before he breaks out of there again and continues his life of crime. Visit. For the best no_vil_underscored experience, this was why the supervillains and the Sinisters were terrified of Draven more than UFH or the Supreme Ones. If the latter caught them, they would just throw them in prison. It wasn't the case for Draven. If they got caught by Draven, there was no prison, only hell awaited them. Funny, Draven's snicker abrupt put a stop to Fergus' maniacal laughter. "Don't." The Stormbringer growled when Draven was about to move his hand, but after seeing him just lift his hand without reaching for his weapon, the Stormbringer didn't dash at him. Click. Draven just snapped, growling. It wasn't even a second passed after his snap when Fergus began to growl. Michael saw Fergus desperately gasping for air. If Michael's guess was right, the white liquid they gave Fergus wasn't just a painkiller but poison. Draven planned everything just like Michael. Arg. The Stormbringer let out a battle cry before dashing at Draven with the heavy sword in her hand. She wanted to save Fergus. They were about to clash when Michael felt an invisible force pulling him back. She tried to fight back, but the force was too powerful. The sight of Draven and the Stormbringer grew smaller and smaller until everything around him became pitch black. He traveled in darkness for a while and then he saw a light at the end. Little by little, he got close to the light and saw his body. It took Michael a few more seconds to settle in his body and become whole again. Michael gasped for air, feeling an excruciating headache for a few moments. His face turned green as Michael felt an urge to throw up, and he did. For a few moments, he coughed up blood. As a result, his face became pale. Quickly the APD injected him with a healing potion to make him feel good. Michael looked into the crack, seeing nothing but darkness. He then slowly turned around to see Sabrina peacefully sleeping on the mattress and still holding the book under her head. So the key opens up portals to other universes. Michael finally solved the long mystery of what the key opens. Now he needed to find the key and get to it before the Guardians. The last thing Michael wanted was the Guardians to get stronger by conquering other universes. Where is the key? Michael asked himself. Although Michael gained nothing tangible through his visit to Etheria, he gained an idea to build a shield device similar to Draven's. The Dark Lord did not need a shield since he could unleash his full power to destroy his enemies. However, Ghost needed a shield. Since Sabrina was still sleeping and he felt exhausted, Michael took a parchment and a quill from the system storage before sitting beside Sabrina. He recalled Draven's shield for a moment and began to sketch a device similar to his on the parchment. With his inventor skill and Eladir, he was confident he could make a device that would make Draven's shield look like a cheap toy. Visit. For a better user experience, you're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.